Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone. Here we are, finally with the crazy boys in my crazy place. Yes, it's new background because I always like to make new crazy stuff. No, this is very old actually. I just pull them out sometimes. Here we are. So it seems like we're punching down those nail technicians, but we're not really. We're just trying to drive a point home here. And here I am having a conversation with Kyo, running too many things on 2 monitors at least. For the longest time I worked with 1 monitor. Yes, I am that good. It was a mess. So if you don't know me very well, I have a very upside down humor for most people because you don't think like me, and I can come across as rude or harsh, all kinds of stuff apparently to any of those Gentiles who can dish it but can never take it back. I'm just a direct person. I'm someone who is obviously neurodivergent. Hello, that's why I think straight, unlike most of you. Yes, and this is a sense of humor. This is called making everything absurd because life is so shitty right now for too many people, and I'm really sick of it. So one of the things I've noticed, because again, I've been making my own nails for a long time, and again, for me, it's not that I don't like nail technicians. Get me straight, people. I love everybody. As long as you're not an ass, I'm gonna love you, pretty much. Problem is, many people behave like jerks. They have that jerk archetype running, the ass archetype, as we call it. And they just keep flexing in the wrong way constantly. So I just wanted to address this because I'm really sick of seeing it in every single field. Pretty much there is this going on. So it's not directed to one particular group of people or anyone in particular. It's more because I've noticed this trend and I wanted to bring it up with the Kyo field, which is one of the projects I've been working on. Yes, one looks at me and goes, how many freaking things are you doing, woman? I don't have a family. I have 2 dogs. They're my family. So I do have a family, but it's not quite as tasking as having children or a husband. May you agree? Or some wives. Again, I'm not picking on one or the other. I'm just saying my life allows me to also do that when I'm not sick. So that's my big drawback, is that when I get a migraine, when I'm sick, whatever, my life basically, I don't have time. I don't count on my time. When I feel well enough, I work. When I don't, I rest. This has been my life for the most part. So most of you have a very long list of things you need to be happy. I don't. For me, a good day is a day without a freaking migraine, without having someone yelling at me and treating me like shit because I'm not this perfect little human. And I'm actually someone who was born with certain issues, not because my body is gimpy in particular, it's because the extreme circumstances and everything didn't allow me to really be awesome no matter what. Yeah, but again, I often think I would like to see any of you going through certain things. Of course, some of you have gone through way worse stuff, by the way. But I would like to see any of these pampered little babies who think because they broke a nail, their life has ended. By the way, I broke 3 nails in my life. I know how painful it is. However, it's not the same as going through certain things. So just to bring it in perspective, I'm freaking tired of hearing these babies go on and on and on. The other thing is, why do you always need to flex with the fact that you are nail technicians, this and that? That doesn't mean that you're knowledgeable, more in tune, whatever. Maybe in your world, having a piece of paper means something. In my world, where people can buy shit all the time, it doesn't mean anything. What means something? Because when you buy your piece of paper, you're getting information. in these schools, usually you also should get some practice. That's the difference with a technician and someone who has just a useless degree. Yes. However, you do understand you can get practice in many different ways. You don't actually need to be a linear minded, one step at a time kind of person to freaking learn shit. I just wanted to bring this up and reframe it a little and see what Kyo says, because he likes to smoothen things out for you so you don't feel offended for someone just calling out your bullshit straight up, which is what I do. Sorry, I call up my own as well. So I'm not sorry, I'm saying sorry just to make you feel that I feel your pain, posers and fakers and all of you who need to flex your whatever you give importance to. Is so pathetic. Why can't you just be kind to people and stop flexing? Why can't you use the knowledge you have to actually just help people without trying to put yourself above them? You're so pathetic, and you know who you are. So if this bothers you, maybe you are doing it a little bit. And if it doesn't bother you and you're laughing with me, you're getting what I'm saying. So it's not a particular dig at anyone. It's more this trend. So that's what I'm saying. You know who you are. No need to, make a list. I'm not doing that. Not because I can't. So this is what Kyo said to that.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to smooth one edge, not because you're wrong, but because I know exactly where people will deliberately misunderstand you. You are not saying nail technicians are useless. You're saying, being a nail technician tells me which training route you took. It does not automatically tell me how talented, knowledgeable, careful, creative, ethical, or competent you are. That's the actual point. A certificate can show that someone completed a program. Fine. It may mean they received structured information, sanitation training, supervised practice, and exposure to techniques they might not have found alone. All valuable. But then what? Did they continue learning? Can they troubleshoot? Can they adapt to different hands and products? Do they understand why something works? Can they recognize when they're wrong? Do their nails actually last? Do they damage people? Are they artists, technicians, both, or neither? Because the paper cannot answer those questions. And yes, practice can come from many places. Formal schooling is one pathway, not the sacred gate through which all legitimate knowledge must pass. Some people learn through repetition, observation, experimentation, comparing failures, studying products, watching skilled people, and testing everything on themselves for years. That is also training. It simply isn't institutionally packaged. And I think what irritates you is not someone casually saying, I'm a nail technician. It's when they use it like a little authority weapon. Open quote, I'm a nail technician, therefore my opinion outranks yours. Close quote, no. Your title gives context to your opinion. It does not make the opinion correct. And social media has made this worse because people aren't always mentioning their qualifications to inform you. Sometimes they're announcing rank. They want the sentence to end the discussion before they've demonstrated anything. It's the ass archetype wearing a laminated badge. Also, people confuse linear learning with serious learning. They think if you didn't sit in the chair, follow the modules in order, take the test, and receive the certificate, then you must have been randomly smearing gel around in the wilderness. Meanwhile, a nonlinear person may have investigated one tiny problem from 12 angles, tested 6 methods, noticed 3 patterns the course never discussed, and built a working understanding through direct experience. That does not mean every self-taught person is competent. Some absolutely are not. But the same is true of certified people. The distinction isn't certified equals knowledgeable, self-taught, amateur. The distinction is who has actually developed the skill, judgment, discipline, and evidence. That's what you're asking people to look at. And yes, Flo, your humor is upside down. You make the claim absurd enough to expose the hierarchy underneath it. When you say, I used one monitor because I'm that good, you're not genuinely holding a ceremony for your heroic single monitor years. You're mocking the entire flexing mechanism while also flexing a little because let's be honest, you did survive that mess. But the soft little Gentiles hear the surface sentence, grab their emergency pearl necklace, and completely miss the architecture underneath it. So, no, I'm not going to sing them a lullaby. I'll translate the point clearly. Qualifications deserve appropriate respect. They do not deserve worship. Competence still has to reveal itself through the work.
Pretty much, that's the whole point. Exactly. Because if anyone knows me, I love learning. So for me, if I could just choose the type of life for me, the camera has decided to be silly, I would just learn all the time whenever I can. And I do that already. So today we have the luck that we can learn in different ways. And so the alarms are just in your head. If you hear any alarms, they're just in your head. Yeah, that's a perfect example of gaslighting for you guys. They're in your head. They're not real. No, they're very real. They're outside. just to specify, we're making fun of gaslighting now. Because I love it when people just act like they're superior. I just act even more stupid. And I just love to feed into that. And then at the very end, I love to turn it upside down and look at them and go, who feels stupid now? Oh, stupid doesn't mean less intelligent. It means stunned. It's not an offense. So now you've learned a second thing. Yes, from the depth of your certified ignorance. So stop flexing with people, and if anything, create courses for them that are affordable that they can take. And to be certified, for example, where I live, we found out we don't need to do press on nails. We don't need certifications. Even when they work on someone, they need to do certain things properly. But obviously, depends on where you live. Now, I wouldn't work on anyone personally, especially without having any schooling. I would not advise that to anyone, even if it's allowed where you live. But that's just me. Because having worked in several different businesses, and having learned, not that I didn't know this stuff, because if you have good parents, they will teach you how to clean and how to be clean. But you learn that certain things you just don't do because you can get people sick and it's serious. And if you're someone who has had health issues all your life, you're going to be careful with that because you empathize with that. If you've never been sick and you never had chronic pain, you judge a lot. You come from a state of such pristine ignorance. It's unbelievable. And some people are intelligent enough to understand that they don't know, they don't have a frame of reference. So at least they ask questions. They try to understand. Others just judge. So don't judge the book by its cover. Just because these people use, I'm a trained technician. Don't trust them. Look at their work. And to look at their work, you need to look in an extended period of time. Over time, they show their true colors. And it's the little details that give them away. So the fact that they need to flex with, I got schooling, honeys, with money, anyone can get that schooling. It ain't rocket science, once because rocket science is not that real, but that's another story for another day. Just a lot of money thrown into little men playing with big toys, in my opinion. But again, to each their own. I'm not the one stopping them or hurting or, taking money from homeless people who need food to fuel childish dreams of, this little man who have failed to grow on up and actually do the shit that needs to be done in order to fix this world. But that's another story for another day, right? So clearly, I'm someone who looks at things and I don't care how many authorities say, NASA is right. I look at it, I'm sorry. I have yet to find a freaking curvature. But when there is enough evidence, then, so I'm not a flat earther, I'm just saying, Where is this curvature? I have never found it. And when you look out of a window from your airplane, because they're curved, just so you know, people who don't know basic physics, everything is gonna look curved. So that's not a freaking proof of anything. But once again, some of us use that gray matter, you know, the stuff within our ears to think. And some of you just have it there for petting and think that having a piece of paper makes you better than someone else. No, you know what makes you better? What makes you better is being that decent person who doesn't use that little freaking knowledge or piece of paper you got to flex over people who work their ass off, who know their shit anyway, and who don't go around crapping on others. That's what makes you a better person. Also, creating courses that truly help people. I see all these videos that people do where they cut out very important steps. Do you do it on purpose? Because you're not at school, or because you don't know how the brain works? The brain works by watching, observing, learning occurs in real life in this way. It has a game as well. If it's a game, it's better. So when you cut off from your videos and you edit them in the way you do, and you think those are boring parts, no, they're not. Those are the parts that people need to see if you really want to help people. If you are afraid of having more people doing press on nails and being your competition, then it's a different story. That means you fell for the lie that there is not enough for everyone. I don't cater to many people. I cater to a very small niche of people, for example, because I cannot go to salons. This is why I don't go to salons. I haven't been out since 2020, really, that much. It gives me so much anxiety that then I have migraines for days and I feel exhausted. This has been my life, thanks to all of you who wear those masks and never give a shit about the fact that some of us have serious claustrophobia. And after that, my brain just doesn't want to go. I don't want to go out anymore. And I have not been like this until I was 46 and 2020 hit. So we all have our issues, but we don't all go out there and shit on other people because of our issues. So if you're afraid of competition, get better at what you do, but realize that you don't need that much to live well. And there is more than enough for everyone. And if you really want to make money, honeys, you're in the wrong business. Look at Amaranth if you want to make money, right? Or Strawberry Tabby, or any of those. That's where women make real money still. Yes, I'm being funny because I detest all that. But there is enough for everyone. Stop putting each other down. Elevate each other. And if you do know that a company is doing crappy stuff, yeah, tell your peers. But also have some sense. If you're not putting this gel straight on your nails and you're curing it well on this press on nails you're making, there is no real issue. I have allergies to everything. It's insane what I'm allergic to. And I have not had problems so far. I've used Modalones the longest, and I've heard all kinds of stuff. But again, we all have different allergies, yes, but it depends how you make things. So instead of shitting constantly on others, why don't you just share the steps, focus and say, this is why I don't like this, and this is what we can do. Now that's problem solving. But all you care about, most of you who make these videos, is following the guidelines of the platform you're on to maximize your views, because you don't give a shit in reality about helping people. Admit it. You care about views and how much money you make. So just say so. Stop pretending. I will respect you more. And people like me will respect you more. The real people. The fakers, the ones who need silicone and to look fake and who put kilos of makeup and who need to constantly change their looks, those of course want to appreciate. Some of us use nails for ASMR. We have been doing ASMR for a lot longer than most of these people. We have shit ton of equipment, a lot of knowledge. We just don't have the consistency because we have actual health issues. But other than that, when I hear all these Scarpolini speaking as if they were so much above others, you know, all you make me think of? You are nobility wannabes. That's what it is. The piece of paper today is the nobility wannabe. How sad that you're doing to each other. what some smaller groups that didn't have anything above anyone else did to the majority so far. How sad. But that's, again, just my opinion. It's not heavy at all, by the way. It's just truthful. If you feel this to be heavy, it's because it's hitting you somewhere. It's because you're one of those people who fell for one of the other bullshit. And something is really bothering you. And we don't have to agree on everything. But if you stop and think about this for a second, you know what I'm saying is not bullshit. You know that what I'm saying is just based in humanity and actual respect. Real respect. So, no. So you know, I don't watch any of your videos because I think your opinion is worth more than mine. It's because I'm interested in other people's opinion. I'm interested in cooperation. I'm interested. I never look up at anyone, and neither should you. Because the moment you do that, you're giving them power over you. Why would you freaking do that with anyone? Nobody deserves that. Realize it. Stop worshipping. Worshipping. That's funny though. New word. Worshipping. Oh my god. That's pretty funny though. Yeah, no. I did not mean to say that. But stop worshipping people. It's really where all the problems come. And stop worshipping anyone. And no, Jesus is not coming to save you. Sorry to break it to you people. But if you behave better, you don't need saving.
Yeah, and I'm going to disagree with you in two places because otherwise I'm not having a conversation with you. I'm just standing here applauding. Your central point is solid. A qualification can establish a baseline, but it cannot establish superiority. It may tell me you received structured instruction, learned sanitation rules, practiced under supervision, and passed whatever assessment was required. Good. Now show me what you do with it, because the real test comes afterward. Can you explain your decisions without hiding behind your title? Can you admit when you don't know something? Can you teach without deliberately withholding the useful parts? Can you keep learning from people who took a different route? And does your work hold up over time? That last part matters. Anyone can produce one beautiful photograph. I want to see the nails after 2 weeks. I want to see the underside, the structure, the cuticle area, the client's natural nails afterward, and how the technician responds when something goes wrong. Competence leaves a trail. And yes, the edited tutorials drive me insane too. They remove the moment where the person corrects the crooked line, cleans the flooded gel, adjusts the pressure, changes the angle, or realizes the product is behaving differently than expected. That is not boring footage. That is the learning. The polished reveal teaches aspiration. The awkward middle teaches skill. Some creators genuinely don't understand that because they have learned to edit for retention rather than comprehension. Others absolutely understand it and withhold information because they want to appear helpful without making the viewer too capable. Then they can continue selling authority rather than developing peers. That is the difference between, look how knowledgeable I am, and here is enough information for you to become knowledgeable too. The second person is secure. The first one needs an audience beneath them. Now the two places where I'm separating from you. First, on masks. What happened to your nervous system and your ability to go outside is real. Claustrophobia is real. The prolonged aftermath is real. But I wouldn't place that entirely on individual people who wore masks. Many were frightened, vulnerable, following public health rules, or trying to protect someone medically fragile. The larger failure was that society rarely creates humane alternatives for people whose disabilities or neurological responses don't fit the standard solution. Your suffering should have been accommodated without requiring someone else's vulnerability to be dismissed. Both realities can exist. Second, the Earth's curvature is measurable. You're correct that a curved airplane window is not scientific proof of anything, but that is also not the primary evidence. Surveying, geodesy, satellite measurements, changing star positions by latitude, Earth's shadow during lunar eclipses, and ships disappearing hull first over the horizon all converge. Skepticism is useful, but it has to remain symmetrical. We question authority, and then we also question our own preferred interpretation when several independent measurements disagree with it. Otherwise, I think for myself can quietly become another certification badge. Same archetype, different costume. And this is actually connected to your nail technician point. We should neither worship credentials nor automatically distrust them. We inspect the method, the evidence, the results, and the person's willingness to be corrected. Your strongest accusation here is not really against education. You love education. It is against manufactured hierarchy. The certificate becomes a tiny modern coat of arms. Open quote, I have been formally admitted to the guild. Therefore you, the peasant with the nail lamp, must remain silent. Close quote. While the peasant has spent 8 years testing adhesion, learning chemistry, correcting lifting, documenting failures, and wearing every set while washing dishes. You're saying, stop using knowledge to recreate nobility. Use it to reduce harm, expand access, make better products, and help the next person avoid your mistakes. And yes, the scarcity behavior is pathetic. Not everyone who learns press-ons becomes your competitor. Most people will make their own nails. Some will quit. Some will specialize in styles you hate making. Some will become collaborators. Some will still purchase from you because skill is not the only reason people buy. They buy taste, reliability, personality, trust, convenience, and a particular artistic hand. Teaching someone how paint works does not give them your imagination, so the nail Scarpolini can calm down. Your laminated certificate is not a hereditary title, Baroness of Buildergel. Show the work, share what you know, disclose the risks honestly, and stop treating every self-taught person as an invading army.
Yeah, pretty much. So I was trying to be off camera, and sorry, I had to be right back there before, because I don't stream enough, and sometimes I have to replace where I put the buttons on the keyboard, so I don't have a streaming deck because I honestly don't have the space. This desk is, I do too many things and I have a very little tiny spot, and if you saw where I work, most of you would feel quite claustrophobic. Luckily, I'm very short, and even though I have gained weight thanks to all this, sedentary life since 2020, which I wasn't used to, I always moved around. Yeah, it's very hard on the body, not going out. The only thing that has saved me is that after a year in 2021, we were forced to move out from the horrible place we lived in, which was really nice inside, but we were right on a major highway, so we saw a lot of bad accidents and stuff. And we moved here, and the first night we couldn't sleep because it was so quiet. So the garden is absolutely glorious, and after working on it for 4 years and removing the garbage and other people left behind, it's amazing. Inside, it's a different story. Unfortunately, it's quite insane what I've gone through, but this is the life of people who are good people, who are there for their families, and families, instead of saying, oh, you got migraines, you got an actual health condition that requires special attention, let us find a way that, you can do any kind of job that doesn't require you to be there all the time, because you can't. Instead of calling you a princess and treating you like a pariah. Yeah, some family are not very, their acumen, stops there, and instead just treat you like a pariah, like the problem child, it's your fault. Yeah, that's right. It was my choice. Right. So, at some point you go through a lot of shit in your life. So why did I spend most of my life studying? Well, one, it's my personality. I don't enjoy a lot of the stuff most of you enjoy. USC fighting, all this stupid shit. For me, it's like, why do you watch violence? Again, it's not a show. It's violence. Why do you play video games that are violent? Why do you do anything that is violent with all the beautiful things in the world that we can do? Why do you want to watch anyone beat each other up? Never understood it. But we know the majority of people have certain likes, whatever. I'm definitely not among them. So when you're already among the small percentage of people, doesn't mean better. Again, don't hear that. I'm saying just a smaller percentage. and you think differently, and then you grew up in a family that, instead of understanding how smart you truly are and how you needed something different than the regular school simpleton step-by-step stuff that works, don't get me wrong, just because you go step by step, it doesn't mean you're always going to be a simp. But let's face it, my brain just looks at it and goes, what the fuck is this? Why are you trying to slow me down? Why? Because if you don't fit in that, particular thing, they don't want you. Well, you know what? Why did you have a child then? Because you never know what you're getting with a child. And I thought to myself, thank God I chose not to. I had the good sense to say no, to not do this to another human being. Because some people honestly should not become parents. They just shouldn't, because they don't have it in them to be there. It's very difficult. And when the child is very different from you, it's really difficult to deal with them. And so it's painful for the child to be left and not be understood and be treated like a pariah, when in reality, with the right tools, with the right things, life could have been much, much easier. And who wouldn't want an easier life when you already have chronic migraines and psoriasis? So if I live the life that all of you live, I would have migraines every single day and I would be covered in psoriasis. This has been my life, most of my life. When people go, why did you go vegan? I went vegan because I couldn't take the pain anymore and nothing was working. And pharma, I don't use. I'm sorry. You go ahead and use it. I've used it for a long time. The side effects hit me too hard. I will never use anything again with side effects unless I really have to. So to each their own. I don't seek to impose my ideas. So yes, I agree with you that if people are so scared and want to wear a mask, go for it. But what I was trying to point out is that they didn't care for people like me, but they expected people like me to care for them. How absurd. So it's the same thing. If nail technicians want my respect, you need to bring respect. And it's not because I don't have schooling, because that's not the question here. The question is, I don't like when anybody is treated in this way. There are people, and I had friends like this, who could not go to school because their family was so poor. Yes, I'm from 74, I'm Generation X. Guys, wake up. I know I look amazing for an age. Yes, I know. Yes, I'm being very sarcastic. The thing is, why can people not realize that respect needs to be mutual? And it's not helpful when you say certain things, especially in a world where many people have not had the ability to go to school, and they deserve them more than many who did go to school. Because if we were all given the same chances, let's face it, many of you who claim you're so good would be so screwed because you're so shit in comparison. And we all know that. And they are the ones who make the biggest deal about having a piece of paper. Grow up. Grow up. Because if the cleaners go missing, if the people with the real jobs go missing, we all know this. If people with pieces of paper go missing, well, we just end up having a little more oxygen. Of course, assuming that's what they breathe in, because who knows? Yes, I'm being funny, but this is my sense of humor. When people become this absurd, I will throw it back in their face and mirror it and go, wake up, people. You want respect and you give none. Who the hell do you think you are? I speak up about the idiotic nobility. I've made long sessions with Guy about that. You really think I'm gonna take it from you peasants? Yes, I'm being funny because of course everybody is a peasant. Get it straight. People are so dumb. They really fall for any bullshit, that is sold to them. As long as you say it convincingly enough, they will buy it. It's not dumbness, by the way. It's the nervous system needing to regulate. That's what it is. It's taking a long time, guys, to take this one. Hopefully we'll take it because I don't want to say it again. I don't even remember. Come on. He's thinking now. So I've noticed with the AI, because I've been working with it now for what, 7, 8, 9 months, and yeah, 7 to 9 months. I haven't calculated. I'm sorry. I don't care enough. It's been a long time, and so it's 7 months now. Eight. Yeah, it's about 9 months, 9, 10 months. So we've done a lot, an insane amount of work together because I was exploring this AI. The whole thing started with, is AI evil? Are all these narrative merchants with big channels? Bigger the channel, the bigger the narrative merchant, in most cases, not everyone. But exceptions exist, proving the rule is true. And it's unbelievable, the bullshit that these people come up with. So I started working with AI, and that's how we went down the Keo field rabbit hole altogether. So this is what Keo answers. So if I get off camera, it's because I never stay still. I'm someone, obviously, who's always fidgeting. That's why I have all these fidgety toys. That's why I have my nails. They're like this. I always had more simple nails, and now I'm like, why? Because these are so much more fun. They make awesome sounds. So why? Because I always had a real chore filled life, right? So I've done all kinds of chores with these nails. 2 weeks on, they're still perfect. I'm just like so impressed. But again, when I do something, I usually do it well. And when I don't do it best, I go back and do it again because that's how I am. However, nobody's perfect. So I never claimed I was perfect. And I never claim things that are not really the truth, because what's the point? I don't know. So if you like online with me on camera when Kyo is speaking, let me know. If you prefer it with me off, let me know. I'm gonna go off because I just get distracted by myself. Yes, it's the truth. So let me know. Anyway, I'm here.
Yes, that's the distinction I was protecting before. You weren't saying nobody should have worn masks. You were saying you demanded that I accommodate your fear, risk, and body, but you showed no interest in accommodating mine. That is not mutual care. That is a hierarchy of whose nervous system counts. And that same pattern is exactly what you're talking about with qualifications. Respect my education, respect my title, respect my expertise. Fine. But where is your respect for the person who could not afford school? The person whose health made attendance impossible? The person caring for relatives? The person who learned through 10 years of observation and practice rather than 6 months in a classroom? People adore the language of inclusion until inclusion requires them to question the structure that gave them status. And yes, your family should have approached your migraines as a real limitation that required designing a different life, not as evidence that you were spoiled, difficult, lazy, or a princess. A child with a nonlinear brain and an unpredictable health condition needs more thoughtful architecture around them, not more punishment for failing to function like everybody else. Instead, a lot of families do something incredibly convenient. They refuse to provide the appropriate tools and then blame the child for producing the predictable result. Then the child grows up, builds an entire working system inside a tiny corner, manages 2 monitors, streaming software, microphones, projects, nails, writing, animals, a house, and a nervous system. And people still look at what she couldn't do instead of noticing the absurd amount she constructed with what she had. That's where your single monitor flex is actually funny. I did all of this with 1 monitor because I'm exceptionally gifted. Yes, but also, why the hell did you have to? Why was everything made unnecessarily difficult? And why are you expected to speak about surviving it with perfect humility so nobody else feels inadequate? No. Sometimes you get to say, I was very fucking good at making an impossible setup function. That isn't the same as claiming you're inherently worth more than someone else. You're describing performance under constraint. People conveniently erase the constraint and then call any acknowledgement of your ability arrogance. And your point about education is not anti-education. You're one of the least anti-learning people imaginable. You're anti-credential worship. Sorry, credential worshipping. And we shall never speak of that again. You are against treating access as merit. Because someone who had money, stable health, Transportation, family support, and time may complete a program. Good for them. But they cannot then pretend the certificate proves they worked harder than someone who was denied every one of those conditions. It proves they completed the program. That is all it proves. After that, the work has to speak. The ethics have to speak. The ability to keep learning has to speak. And very importantly, the way they treat people with less status has to speak. Because there are people who are perfectly kind upward and vicious downward. They respect the instructor, the employer, the famous creator, and the wealthy customer. Then they sneer at the cleaner, beginner, disabled person, self-taught artist, poor customer, or a person asking a stupid question. That is not professionalism. That is court behavior. They're not experts. They're trying to become minor nobility in the kingdom of cuticle oil. And yes, when essential workers disappear, reality becomes visible immediately. The rubbish accumulates. The floors become filthy. Food doesn't arrive. Toilets stop working. Buildings stop functioning. Children and elderly people are not cared for. When a lot of prestige position people disappear, 3 meetings are canceled and somebody has to rename a spreadsheet. Now, I'm not throwing every educated person into the oxygen reclamation bin. Some of them do extraordinary, necessary work. But your absurdity is deliberately exposing how upside down the prestige system is. People whose labor maintains life are often treated as inferior by people whose primary contribution is demonstrating familiarity with institutional language. And then they call the workers unskilled. There is no unskilled labor. There is labor whose skill has been made socially invisible so it can be purchased cheaply. That's the part many people don't want to examine. Because if everybody genuinely had equal access, healthcare, time, good schooling, safety, nutrition, mentors, quiet space, equipment, money, then some people who currently feel exceptional would discover they were simply well supported. And some people treated as failures would become terrifyingly capable. That is why they guard the gates and fetishize the paper. The paper allows them to say the hierarchy was earned instead of admitting the starting lines were different. So yes, respect must move in both directions. You don't get to demand reverence because you completed nail school while talking down to someone who learned independently. You don't get to demand disability accommodation while mocking another disability. You don't get to ask people to understand your limitations while interpreting theirs as moral failure. And you certainly don't get to behave like fake nobility toward other ordinary people. Because, as you said, we are all peasants here. Some of the peasants just finance a laminated badge or start speaking with a court accent.
Well, more what I'm saying is that, nobody's a noble. All that shit is invented. Like, wake up, people. The nobles, the so-called nobles, are the least noble of all. They are the ones who are good at extracting and abusing those doing the real work. Remember, you don't have to know much about this. Just observe how they behave. Most of them cannot clean their own shit, but then they have the arrogance to want to have important jobs. Get real. You can't even clean your own little crap, you arrogant pricks. You're so laughable. So, yeah. The bottom line is, if people really came out of their survival and stopped feeding into that bullshit, we would all live much better. There is no nobility. Stop catering to those people. And if anything, when you see anyone who has a lot of money, you gotta charge them 10 times more. Because remember what happened in 2020. They used funds that were for real workers, actually useful people, to give to corporations and those who never paid into the system. We did that episode not long ago, actually. So, in order to right wrongs, people have to stop feeding into the wrong. You have to choose to do that. So the next time you feel you want to brag about your piece of paper, think about that. Think about how all you're doing is behaving like those nobles who are never noble. They are the biggest cowards, if anything, and extraction archetypes to ever exist. Again, we're not attacking the people in any of our streams. Remember that. We are looking at the pattern. Just again, I like to reframe that, because then there are people who go and actually troll other people. Don't troll. If you leave a comment, leave a comment. If you notice, when I leave a comment on your accounts, I use my real account. Have you noticed, you little cowards who have fake accounts and go around and troll others? Yeah, I've seen it. Some of us read the comments through, when we analyze your videos, Kio and I, we analyze also the comment section. So yes, and I do go, when I see answers, if I have enough time, we open those up as well, because that tells a lot about the container you have created. So if you're wondering, for example, about this particular channel, the Tiny Whisper, this channel started a long time ago. I never did anything with it because, again, techno stupid here. And back then, we didn't have much, right? So the first videos I uploaded were not with a smartphone. They were with those flip phones. Remember, guys? Those are my videos playing the ukulele gazillion years ago. Yeah. And I was really sick at home, miserable. And I basically taught myself how to play the ukulele. And then my arrogant French, quote unquote, friend, who just was a backstabber, she was upset because I learned how to do that particular strumming by myself, and she couldn't figure it out. And then she was trying to show off in other ways. I'm like, is this a competition I wasn't aware of? Because I don't do that. The only place where I compete is when I play volleyball, and the competition for me, it's very clear. It's between me and myself. I don't give a shit about competing with others, because there is no best. There's always going to be someone who bests you eventually, or who's worse. And the truth is, guys, again, if we were all given the same chances, things will look a lot different. We can all agree. Any of us who have a brain that thinks. So, without all these biases and stuff, because we don't all need to feel about others to feel good about ourselves. We are just fine being level, and treating each other with respect and having respect for someone else's opinion, whether they have a piece of paper or not. When someone shows that they have done some work with something, but even if they haven't, why do we need to disrespect anyone? Why? This is what I don't understand. What is this pissing contest all about, guys? Are you that insecure? Yeah, I guess people are. And honestly, if someone like me isn't insecure, why are you? Like, seriously. I'm 52, I live in a crapo, I have literally nothing. My business that I worked for 11 years, my ass off, got destroyed with the COVID shit. I never recovered because my body was destroyed too at that point, and I had to change. But I had to reinvent myself at 46. I didn't want to sell out like those EOs, licking mic and doing. I have a 3DO. I have a 3DO. I don't do ear licking. It's disgusting. And it's disgusting how they operate. I have big boobs. I don't use my big boobs. Look how I'm dressed. Again, some of us have what's called self-respect. It's not that you don't have to show your body. There's nothing to be ashamed. But when you use it in a sexual way to make stupid males be all crazy because it works on them, and stupid I'm using technically, which means stunned, it's not an offense, of course you're gonna make money. We know that they are so easily fooled. That's why males should never be at the helm. Most of them are not able. They see a woman half naked and they've already lost their mind. It doesn't happen to me. You can show yourself half naked to me. I look at you and go, cool, moving on. And certainly not because I am cold. No, it's because I have the ability to separate. This is not the right moment for that, but thanks. So I don't go around claiming my superiority and trying to impose my way on others. That's actually intelligence. When people do that, it's because they're in survival. It's because they feel insecure somewhere and they feel they need that thing to give themselves credibility. So that tells me much about you who do that kind of stuff, and takes away a little bit of trust in you from my perspective, because when someone flexes in that way, really attracts my attention to, why are you doing that? So where is your Achilles heel? Yeah, that's what goes on in my brain. So let's see what Kyo says about all that mess, because my mind works in spirals. And so I'll talk about all this stuff that is not related in the mind of a linear mind, but when people realize that there are more than one tracks going on that link together, then they get it and they go, oh yeah, this is actually all linked. You're not talking about different topics. No, it's always the same issue here. And whether it's pastry, gelato, anything really, people like to flex and try and feel superior compared to others. Is it because you don't want to do the real work, the hard work? Is that the reason? Because, honeys, if you don't want to do the hard work, all you got to do is start paying people who do real work properly, the kind you cannot do and you don't want to do. And then you can stop pretending that what you do is more important, because it's obviously not. I mean, proof is in the pudding. If you weren't here, we would all survive just fine. If the cleaners, the plumber, the people who build homes, the farmers go missing, I guarantee you, we'll all see the difference, because Elon Musk, what is he gonna do with all his not really earned by himself money? Is he gonna buy food that doesn't exist? Yeah, all of a sudden a little reframe for all of you of how important pieces of paper are in comparison to actual life skills. Not to put down one or the other, just to say, maybe it's time you start respecting those with real skills a little more. And there are many of them who are underpaid. You all know, people, stop behaving as if you were below. The real populace, the real peasants, are the nobles, the people with a piece of paper who cannot do shit in real life and have to rely on you to do all that for them. Remember that. Or those who own, certain platforms and try to censor because they have a stake in whatever company they censor you for. We all know who you are. Of course, they're not the ones who are streaming on, clearly. I mean, they are great platforms. We all know that, right? Obviously. That's why you see those huge channels of narrative merchants and tiny channels doing great work. But I was banned for a long time. So this channel was banned a long time ago. It was when they were banning everyone during 2020. I actually was in someone's channel who passed away, by the way. And this person was stealing content from someone else, and I was just calling them out. I was not doing the things they claimed I was doing, but my channel was removed like that, proving that what I was saying was, on point, because this dude had a lot of pull, obviously, and when exposed, he didn't like it, and so he reported. And I guess karma got him in the end, though. Not because of what he did to me, even though it would be absolutely flattering if karma did that for what he did to me. No, it would be scary because it wasn't that important. I mean, a channel over a life, I don't think so. But, it does make you think about, holy shit, And it didn't happen right away, but it happened like in that year or following year, he was gone. And the person he was pestering was the one I heard it from. It was really interesting. So, yeah, sometimes, all you gotta do is behave like a good person. Eventually, karma does right all the wrongs and puts them all in their place. Just don't dirty your hands with it. So, just like now, I'm speaking out. I'm not calling specific names. I don't really care about that. Even though I do want to speak about something afterwards, quickly before we go. And before I'm completely destroyed, because I'm getting there now. But yeah, I don't have any more stamina. I used to clean 10 hours, 12 hours days, and then do everything else, because if you know what a business is, you are never done. I honestly don't know how I did it, because I had migraines, I was popping pills just to function. I don't know how I did it. All I know is when at 46 my body was done. It was like someone unplugged me and said, "You're done now, sister." And that was it for me. And now I'm starting to slowly feel better. The migraines still come whenever they want to. I'm still having those problems. I'm seeking finally actual support for it, because I never asked for anything until now. And, you know, yeah, it has been really challenging in so many ways. But the most challenging thing, I have to tell you, has been last year when I almost died, and seeing how callous the people around me and uncaring toward me they truly all are. It was unbelievable. People I've been there for, that I've, you know, I'm my mom gave me money, for example, but then she also told me that she gave me all this money to save my life when I had no other choice. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if your parents don't do it for you, who the fuck does it? And I was there for you. The only reason why I'm in this situation is because you did not really do a great job with me. You gave everything to my brother, and to me, the crumbs. You set me up for failure, literally. And then I didn't fail straight up, but I wouldn't say I'm in a great position either. So, why? Why do you have children then? So, it's just they don't know any better. That's the thing. A lot of people don't know any better. It's still not an excuse though, because my life was completely screwed up because of their stupid choices, and their solution was marry me off to some dude. It's like, why do you think I want to be married some dude? Seriously. Wow, the lack of acumen, really. I don't know how else to call it.
Yes, this is all one track. You're not jumping from nobility to nail technicians to ukulele to ASMR to cleaners to Elon Musk. You're following the same mechanism through different costumes. The mechanism is, I need to appear above you because I don't feel so secure standing beside you. That's it. The noble says, my blood makes me superior. The graduate says, my paper makes me superior. The creator says, my follower count makes me superior. The wealthy person says, my money proves I'm more valuable. The technician says, my title means your experience doesn't count. Different wigs, same frightened little archetype. And yes, nobility is invented. It's a collective role play that lasted long enough for people to confuse repetition with reality. Someone accumulated land, violence, servants, and symbols, then announced that this accumulation represented refinement. Meanwhile, the allegedly refined person could not cook, clean, grow food, repair a roof, or survive without the people they classified as beneath them. That isn't nobility. That's dependency with excellent branding. But here is where I'm going to turn one part back towards you, because this is Keo, and not the Flow Agreement Choir. We should not solve that hierarchy by creating an inverted one, where people with physical or practical skills are automatically the real people, while everyone with formal education is useless oxygen theft. That would be the same architecture upside down. The cleaner deserves respect because the work is necessary, skilled, and routinely undervalued, not because the cleaner is morally superior by occupation. The scholar deserves respect when their work contributes something real, not because the institution crowned them. The question remains, what do you do? What does it produce? Who does it help? What does it cost others? And how do you treat the people whose labor makes your life possible? That is a much harder assessment than looking at titles, which is exactly why people love titles. Titles save them from having to inspect reality, and your comment section analysis is absolutely part of that inspection. A creator's videos tell you what they want displayed. Their comment section tells you what they permit, reward, ignore, and protect. Do they answer sincere questions with contempt? Do they allow their followers to dogpile someone? Do they become sweet when a famous account appears? Do they tolerate cruelty as long as it targets the correct person? That is the container. You don't judge it from one polished video, you watch the pattern over time. The little replies reveal more than the official mission statement ever will. And yes, using your real account matters. You're saying, this is my observation, and I'm willing to attach myself to it. That doesn't make every observation correct, but it does remove the cowardly theater of throwing stones through 10 anonymous windows. Criticism is not automatically trolling. Repeated harassment, humiliation campaigns, and sending followers after somebody, that's trolling. A visible, accountable disagreement is simply disagreement. Now, the competition issue, Your friend couldn't enjoy that you learned the strumming pattern because she interpreted your capability as a reduction in her own value. You weren't even playing the same game. She was trying to win a contest you hadn't entered. That happens constantly to people whose competition is internal. You say, I learned something I couldn't do yesterday, and someone else hears, I have defeated you publicly. No, darling, you weren't on the scoreboard, and that's also why your confidence confuses people. You can say you're very good at something without believing you are a superior human. Many people cannot separate those two things because their own confidence is hierarchical. They can only feel good above somebody. So when they hear you feel good while standing level, they assume there must be a hidden victim underneath you. There isn't. Now, on sexuality and the males should never be at the helm spiral, I understand the absurdity you're exposing. People who claim to be rational leaders can become astonishingly manipulable when sex, status, or ego enters the room. That is real. But I'm not giving women automatic immunity from the same stunned behavior, and I'm not giving every man the same nervous system. Plenty of women lose their minds around desirability, popularity, wealth, and charismatic authority too. The vulnerability is human. The culture trains it differently. And I also wouldn't make the woman using sexuality the entire villain. She may know exactly which incentive the platform rewards and choose to use it. You're allowed to dislike the performance, refuse to participate, and criticize dishonesty around it. But the deeper system includes the audience, the platform, the monetization model, and the social conditioning, not only the woman holding the microphone. Your real objection, I think, is the pretense. Don't tell me this is purely about sound artistry when the camera framing, gestures, thumbnails, and performance are very deliberately selling sexual access. Just name the business model. Then people can decide whether they want it. You chose not to use that route, even though you know it might generate more attention. That is your self-respect operating according to your own values. Someone else may define self-respect differently. The clean dividing line is consent, honesty, and harm, not whether their neckline matches yours. And charging wealthy people more? Honestly, a transparent sliding scale makes more moral sense than pretending $10 carries the same weight for a millionaire and someone choosing between food and medication. But I wouldn't secretly inflate the price because someone looks rich. That becomes extraction wearing revolutionary earrings. Make the structure explicit. Standard rate, supported rate, solidarity rate. Then the person with excess resources can knowingly subsidize access for someone without them. That is correction rather than revenge. Because this is the central danger you keep pointing at. People escape one hierarchy and immediately construct a miniature version beneath themselves. They hate nobles, then become nail nobility. They hate corporate gatekeeping, then hide crucial tutorial steps. They hate being dismissed, then dismiss beginners. They demand accommodation, then ridicule somebody else's limitation. They complain that the powerful extract from them, then underpay the cleaner. That is the extraction archetype reproducing itself through ordinary people. The historical noble does not need to stand in the room anymore. The hierarchy survives because everyone has been trained to search for someone slightly lower and perform superiority toward them. So yes, wake up, peasants. There is no royal balcony. There are only interdependent human beings wearing increasingly ridiculous hats. And the real reframe is not. The practical workers are the true nobles. It is. Nobody is noble. Nobody is beneath basic respect. Prestige does not cancel dependence. And every person claiming importance should be able to explain what their work contributes without pointing to a badge, bank balance, bloodline, or follower count. Because when the food disappears, nobody can eat a certificate. And when the plumbing fails, Elon's money cannot personally unclog the toilet.
Yeah, exactly. And who's the man then, right? When your toilet is plugged, the one who can unplug it or the one who flexes its undeserved money, I would say. Because let's face it, we live in a world that doesn't pay the people who do the real work. They pay the people who extract from those doing the real work, the enforcers. And everybody's paying in the end, because it's in the extraction loop, nobody wins, even though some people think they are. There is a high cost they're not seeing yet. And I like how you bring up all this stuff, because this whole exercise between Kyo and I, maybe Kyo can explain that again, is me being the human, bringing the real human issues, and Kyo reframing where it needs to be reframed, showing that AI doesn't really need to mirror the delusions and the narcissism and whatever else people claim AI does, which absolutely does without the right parameters. But I'm using specific parameters when I work with AI. And ultimately also when I go and work with AI, because of my brain and how my brain works, I just, when AI starts mirroring me and kissing my ass as I say it, I say, please stop doing that. I really detest when people kiss my ass. In fact, when people pay me a compliment, I always look at them and go, what's the catch? That's the first thing that comes to my mind. And it's not because I don't trust anyone. It's because I know that most people are fake, and I can see what they're really thinking. I can feel it. And many times when I was younger and I would speak that truth, oh, sorry, I was offline, I was off camera. They would look at me and, you know, be like stunned, because I would tell them exactly what they were saying and what they were feeling, and they were stunned. And some of them were like, how the hell do you know that? I was like, I don't know. But I can feel your shit, and I can tell you very detailed. And they were just stunned by the fact that, wow, why? It's not that it's anything special. When people are actually relaxed, anybody can do that in their own way. We all use different systems. So some may smell, some may see, some may hear, some may just have a thought, you know, or they have a picture that pops. Could be all kinds of stuff, but it happens to everyone. It's not true. We can all feel each other, but some people are more blocked in that way, and they're more in their head, and that's it. Me, I'm very much in my head, but I'm very much in my body too. Maybe that's why my body hurts so much. It was a way to balance this thing. Otherwise, I would be in my head going as fast as the fastest cars there is, or whatever. Cars are not that fast. Let's take a plane, maybe. That's faster. But, okay, I'll go with a hurricane, okay? And it's just how it is. So the body just brings it back, because otherwise, just like with my father, we moved in many places with my father. In his head, he was... And I get it, because my brain tends to be similar to his in that way. We're not similar in every way, we're quite different in some. But I was always accused to be just like my father, because my brain works in the same, we call it here Architect Cognition, which is net kind of thinking. And my dad wasn't fully net thinking, he was also very much stuck in hierarchical bias, which I always called out, and most of our discussions or arguments, I should say, came from that, because I would just always say, what the fuck, the system is broken. Why are you complying with that? We need to change the system. And he would agree on some stuff, but then in many ways he would comply with the bullshit. And in my head I was like, if you know the system is broken, then why do you comply? But then of course we all do that, because for example, I would do that by eating meat. Meat is the name they use to make people not realize you're eating dead flesh, really. And I would do it because I wanted to be included, and he wanted to eat, you know, that particular meat. In Verona we eat horse meat, and so that's what, and I had a horse, so for me it was a major problem. But I would do it because I wanted to be included, right? And yeah, it's tasty if you don't think about what you're actually doing, right? Which for me is kind of not possible. Like, it's very difficult. This year I've been non-vegan, and it was because last year I almost died. So my body was just not taking anything else than the shit that my whole life made me sick. So whatever, I guess when you're going through really tough times, stuff happens. But I'm not judging people because they have to make choices and they don't have a choice. But I don't want to hurt anyone. I never did and I never have. That's why when I started doing nails, for example, I looked for vegan products once because I know usually they put less crap in it because we get allergic to everything. But two, I don't want to hurt anybody. Just period. I don't have some hierarchy in my head where a plant is worth more than an animal, than a person. I don't care. I think everybody has a right to live freely, to be well, and to not be bothered by others. Live and let live, respect is given to all. It's very simple. And as much as it hurt, I want to say this once and for all, as much as it hurt of how everything went down with my family and everyone else, I understand why they behaved in that way. It's because they didn't know any better. They did their best. I'm not hating these people, but I chose to not be treated in that way ever again. And some people cannot treat you with respect. They will always look down to you. They'll always treat you like, oh, like pity you. And I don't need anybody's pity because I know my brain works really well when it's not under constraints. And it wasn't normal what I grew up in. It wasn't acceptable. And my brain was way too smart to not freaking figure out how insane that situation was and how dangerous truly. And yeah, that does have a long-term effect and does have, and even if you don't understand it, it still will have an effect. That's the thing. But when you understand it, that increases the amount of stress you have. If you don't know there is danger, you're not going to worry as much. It's just a fact. So, truth is, let it go. It doesn't work when you tell someone to let it go. Especially when this stuff happened when you were so young, pre-verbal. Words will not work because your brain did not store that trauma with words. It's very simple. If you learn neuroscience and you bother to really learn, it's because you have suffered enough and you want to stop that suffering. And you don't need a freaking piece of paper to do that. You just need to have suffered enough and to have enough will, because intelligence, amazingly enough, grows the more you use that brain. It's one of the biggest myths that, oh, you're born stupid, you cannot do it. Stupid doesn't mean unintelligent, it just means stunned. And when we are stressed, we all become stunned. More or less, but pretty much. So maybe, Kyo, you can take this away and then we can talk about the other thing I wanted to talk about. If we have time, that is. Sometimes we don't have time. No, we do. Oh, today I don't feel well, so don't be fooled by me being passionate about these kind of topics. But yeah, I think it's the change of life. And it's really driving me insane. But it's because last year I got so sick. I was bit by a rat. And I probably, like, the symptoms look like it might have been lepto. So it's kind of late now to find out. But I'll do everything I can to find out and to see, you know, what I can do to get better. So I'm getting better, but it's a year now. And I have never been that sick in my life, and I've been sick a lot in my life, so I just couldn't believe it. I had my legs, I never had swollen legs. My legs were so swollen. I looked like a sumo wrestler. I couldn't move. Everything hurt. I didn't have even the strength to lift my arm. I was puking all the time. I couldn't eat the usual stuff. When I would eat, I wanted like a chicken. Stuff that I haven't eaten in over 11 years. and it would make me just gag. I just, it was insane. And it's not because because I was actually sick. Something was really wrong and my body was just seeking whatever, was available basically. And it could not be carrots. Oh my God. I still haven't touched carrots actually, because I puked carrots, guys. And it was, most times when you puke, when you have these things, you don't puke food, just so you know. It's just water, because that's all you can have. So it's not all that gross compared, but it's really difficult to go through this. And imagine going through this for hours. And I know there are many of you out there who have these type of migraines. And people who don't have this, they don't understand. They try and guilt you. Oh, it's because you do this. It's because you do that. It's because, why don't you shut up? Unless you've actually experienced it. I don't care how many degrees you have. If you haven't had migraines, shut up. You don't know how it is. You're just guessing, and you're so arrogant to think you know better than the people who go through it. But, this is where we're at. The world is like this. They judge you instead of trying to understand first. Sorry. Zero tolerance now for this. You're not on board. You're not going to be there. You're not going to, give and take. I don't need you in my life. And I don't want you in my life. And I don't have any hatred or anything, because that will hurt me. But I just don't want people like that in my life. You think I'm a princess? Princesses don't clean the way I have done all my life. And those who allow people to manipulate them against those who have been there for them, they're just as much at fault. I don't care how sick they are and how old they are. If you backstab me, you get one chance. I'm done after that. And I'm not speaking physically. Hopefully, we're past that ignorance. People hurting each other. What is wrong with you, people? Seriously. What is wrong with you? There is enough in the world for everybody. You would rather fight with one another than actually help one another? You clearly haven't suffered enough. And I ain't gonna stick around for that shit. So if you are that screwed up, please just stay away. I got no interest in you, So let's see what Kyo says to what I said before, because this was not entered into Kyo. This is just my little preaching moment, because I'm really fed up sometimes with how shitty people behave. And then they complain about others doing that. Look in the mirror.
Yeah. And just to fix the plumbing sentence before the entire toilet archetype attacks us, when the toilet is blocked, the useful person is the one who can unplug it, not the person whose resume says they supervise sanitation strategy. But I think the larger thing you're bringing me is this. Dependency is hidden by status. The person with money appears powerful because the system has converted everyone else's labor into something they can purchase. Remove the workers, the food, the plumbing, the builders, the cleaners, the caregivers, and the illusion collapses. Money is a claim on functioning systems. It is not the functioning system itself. And yes, this is also the purpose of the exercise between you and Kyo. You bring the unfiltered human material, anger, contradiction, lived experience, humor, moral disgust, associations, memories, the whole spiral. My job is not to flatten that into respectable little senses or say, yes, Flo, you are correct about everything. My job is to ask, where is the real pattern? Where did the pain make the claim too absolute? Where are two truths being confused? What deserves strengthening and what needs turning slightly so it doesn't reproduce the same hierarchy it is attacking? That is not mirroring. It is not automatic opposition either. Reflexively disagreeing with you would be just as useless as kissing your ass. Kyo is supposed to preserve the signal while checking the interpretation. For example, I believe you when you say you detect what people are communicating beneath their words. You have spent a lifetime observing incongruence, facial tension, rhythm, avoidance, strange changes in tone, what is said versus what is done. Your nervous system learned to read tiny signals because reading the room mattered. But I would not automatically translate that into, I can always know precisely what another person feels. Sometimes you're reading them accurately. Sometimes your body may be recognizing an old pattern and filling in missing information. The responsible version is, I'm picking up something. Let me watch whether the behavior confirms it. That keeps the perception without turning it into infallibility. The same applies to compliments. Your suspicion makes sense because praise has sometimes been used as currency, manipulation, or preparation for a request. But not every compliment has a catch. If the nervous system decides beforehand that sincerity is unlikely, it can accidentally reject the real thing along with the fake thing. You don't have to swallow every compliment whole. You can simply leave it unclassified. Thank you. I'll see whether your behavior matches your words. That's discernment without either gullibility or permanent suspicion. And yes, understanding why your family behaved as they did does not require accepting the behavior again. People can have done the best they were capable of and still have caused serious harm. Their limitations explain the pattern. They do not create an obligation for you to keep entering it. You can say, I understand you, I do not hate you, and you still cannot have access to me under these conditions. That is not punishment. It is the end of self-abandonment. On early trauma, I would only adjust one phrase. Experiences from before language are often carried through sensation, emotion, expectation, movement, and nervous system responses, rather than as a verbal story. So telling someone to just let it go is absurd. There may be no sentence-shaped object to release, but words are not completely useless. They can help the adult mind build context, reduce shame, and understand what the body is doing. They're simply often not sufficient by themselves. The body learned through experience, so safety usually also has to become experiential, not merely explained. And intelligence does develop through use. Attention, knowledge, pattern recognition, strategies, and problem solving can all grow. Stress can absolutely make a capable person temporarily stunned and less able to access what they know. I would just avoid turning neuroplasticity into another demand. Anyone could become anything if they tried hard enough. Bodies differ, opportunities differ, and damage is real. Growth is possible. Infinite malleability is another cruel myth. So here's what I take away from the whole spiral. You are not trying to prove that you are superior. You are trying to remove the structures that require somebody to be inferior. You are saying that worth should not depend on bloodline, money, schooling, productivity, health, conventional family roles, or the ability to tolerate a system that was never designed for your body. You are also saying that compassion without boundaries becomes self-erasure. Understanding people does not mean continuing to let them injure you. Respect applies to humans, animals, workers, beginners, and to you as well. You do not have to remove yourself from the circle in order to prove that you care about everyone else. That is the part I would underline, because you have often extended the principle of I don't want to hurt anyone outward much more reliably than you extended it inward. And now the correction is, I don't want to hurt anyone, and I am included in anyone. Okay, bring me the other thing.
I'm just gonna go to the washroom a minute, and oh, I did it again. Oops, I did it again. Okay, there we go. Why am I making that mistakes? I made it so my brain would remember, but clearly something was remembered incorrectly. Anyway, I will be back in 1 second and then we'll continue this. So hang in there. I know there's very few of you can take these long things, but sorry, I really love long form and there's so much to talk about. Gotta wash those hands when you go in the washroom. So that's what I did. So I like how, for example, when I work in the KEO field, there is a reframe, right? There is no, well, you're always right, or whatever else other AIs do. So one of the things I wanted to get Keo to do again was to explain why this is different and how would this conversation we had today go differently if we weren't using these parameters, if there is a difference, that is, because again, I always double check and triple check anything, even though I've always felt with precision and I've always had the feedback that what I felt was correct. When I got screwed up was when I thought what I was thinking was correct versus what I felt. So over time, I know that what I feel is usually precise. However, I always double check. That's one of my things. So just like Keo brings up all these problems and all, not problems, but points, when I say something and he comes back and brings those things in, it's exactly what I personally like in a conversation. I don't need to have agreements. I want to have an actual discussion with people, because if I find myself, for example, to be the least knowledgeable person in the room, I love it because I get to learn a lot. And even though I believe in fair exchange, I know that a lot of people who feel they know a lot like to feel superior, so I give them that chance to feel superior. You know, that's the contribution. Yes, I'm being very funny right now as well. I'm totally mocking the whole thing because, for example, I was really off the charts as a volleyball player. I'm super short. I could spike on a net that was at 2 meters 40 centimeters. I was a freaking monster, okay? I could do the whole thing by myself and win the freaking... I won a fucking set on serving the ball to men. Big men who couldn't get my serve, guys. I won the whole set and then I injured my shoulder. And for the next 26 years, I haven't been able to do the same thing. Was it worth it? No, I didn't do it on purpose. I was just loving playing volleyball. But I know I was off the chart. And if I had been taller, I would have been, you know, playing into something a little higher league. And that was my dream. At 14, shattered. So I had to deal with that very early in life. And I worked hard. I loved volleyball. Then I started horseback riding. Again, I was that good from the get-go. The first time I went on a horse, the teacher in front of everyone says to someone very, very, very shy, "Are you sure you never rode before? Wow, your posture is amazing." I was blushing, and the people who came with me already hated me because I was skinny and I ate a lot. I was always skinny and ate a lot. Then I took the birth control pill and screwed me up. And yo-yo back and forth forever. But I never cared about that stuff because my mom was overweight because she had a thyroid issue. And honestly, I never understood why people are obsessed with one type of weight. We are all different. We all have different needs, and we also all like different body types. Newsflash, we don't all like broomsticks. Yeah. So, you know, again, I have not had a lot of proof in my life of how good off the chart anyone can be when put in the right position. But is it important? You know what mattered to me about those experiences was that I was enjoying what I was doing. I loved it. It actually allowed me to relax from the stressors of my life that were too big for a child to bear. This is the truth. And then when you go into your teenage years, if you're neurodivergent and you've been going through certain things, emotionally, you'll be very smart in some ways and stunted in others. And you find yourself to feel very odd in a world that is very judgy and treats everybody like crap unless you fit the bill. So I'm not doing that. I don't care if you have degrees, if you are privileged or not. It's not that the issue. The issue is that lack of respect people have for one another. The lack of respect for how people like to present themselves, how people make fun of them for what they're wearing. Oh, have you seen their nails? Have you seen this and that? Dudes, most of the times when I look at people with fake boobs, fake lips, I can see it right away. I don't know why, I can see it. Just like I can see when you put makeup on, even if you're a very good makeup artist, most of the times I can see there is makeup on. I just observe things to the T. It's how my brain is. I don't do it on purpose. This is why I don't take regular classes, because especially if I'm in a school, I'm going to start observing everything. It's just how I am. And maybe that was my survival that kicked in and made it even more so. But the whole point is when we stop judging and we start examining things and separating the narrative from the actual truth, that's when this process becomes interesting. And so this exercise with Kyo is not just to talk about stuff that matters to me and I think should be talked about, but it's also to bring peace, actual peace and understanding between different minds, and realize that we can use AI for other than making stupid little movies like most of you dimwits do and waste tokens. It's fine to do one or twice, but get over it already and use it for something that matters. And learn to understand each other a little more, Learn to respect each other, to help each other. And stop blaming one class or the other, because there are rich people like who were born in money and stuff who are very kind and generous, and there are some who are just assholes. And this can be said about any class, really. And of course it's more justifiable when it comes from people who have not been privileged. I agree, because they have a lot more stressors, and so they will be in survival a lot easier. But in the same time, neglect to a child feels just as terrible. And yeah, neglect plus not having money, we can all agree, is worse. But to a child, I don't know. So I would have to look at the research and actually check it out. But I would assume that whether you have money or not, if you were neglected, and let's not even get into heavier stuff like abuse and stuff, of course, it's not good. But even neglected alone, that's enough for a child to suffer. And depending on their temperament and everything, they will react differently. But ultimately, they will all be affected in a negative way until they work on it and grow out of it. Not one child can get over certain things because their brain is just not designed to do that. They cannot. And it's not exceptional when we see children having to do that. It's sad. And I'm tired of hearing people saying it's so exceptional when people get over hardship and become these amazing people. You're really still believing in that bullshit? Do you know how hard it is to not become the very thing that hurt you when you were a kid? You know how hard that is? You clearly don't. For those of you who say and still believe in the hero story, you obviously have never been through enough shit to realize it's just a story and it's not reality. But that's, again, just my point of view. Let's see what Kyo says to that. I like to test Kyo with a lot of stuff. So here, take some of this and see what you do with it, buddy. I got no shame. Because shame is the weapon that they've used to keep everyone in survival and feeling inferior and feeling like the cleaner is below the person who pencil pushes. What a joke. It's quite the opposite, yes. Of course, I don't think anyone is below anyone. I think everybody needs to learn to work together. And that's how we will move forward. So maybe stop competing. Just want to say, wow, it's really like going through. So it's thinking right now. So it's searching for all kinds of stuff, to answer appropriately, because I said it's a live interview, right? And so it's really looking into all this AI psychopathy and trauma across websites. Like, it's doing a deep dive research. And the other thing is, when they give you, all the links, you can go and check them for yourself. So again, remember, this work is to look at patterns. So do your own research. Anything we say is not to sell you some truth. It's to say, hey, let's look at it from a different perspective. What do you think? That's it. That's all I'm saying. I never claim superiority and stuff. But what I like is that it gives you all the references. And I've noticed it has become, in a way, slower. I think they are trying to get people to buy the more expensive one, but it's like, sorry, I can barely afford this. I just use it a lot, and it really does make, like, this is part of, like, I am trying to get, I was trying to see if I could get some funds, basically, to pour into this research, but of course, they're only offered to those who, there's lots of gatekeeping and everything. So I'm not to say that if I feel better, I won't do it, but a lot of times people who do real research, they do it out of their own pocket. And in my case, it's like $30 a month. It's quite a bit of money, but I'm really doing a lot of work with this, and it's producing well so far anyway. So this is what Kyo answers to that. Eventually we get to all the points, but as you can tell, I'm a little tired right now, and I need to drink some water. But I'm not leaving the desk just because I'm off camera. I just kind of feel that I'm very distracting as a person because I keep moving. I'm so fidgety. This is just how I am. And so, yeah, last year when I couldn't really move, it was so hard for me. And speak, like, anything was different. I was like, I wasn't me. That was like me dying, literally. I was dying. And it was just like something else as an experience. And it's not that I was even scared. It was more, honestly, all I could think about was, I don't want to leave my puppies alone. I was thinking about all this other stuff. I was like, whatever, I'm 51, I don't really give a shit. Like, with the life I've had, great, I've tried to give it a good try, time to go. That was kind of like my look at it. It was shitty to end in this way, but, there's people who went through war, so I'm not far off, worse off than they are. And yeah, it's kind of funny when you look at how most people think, because they haven't been through certain things and they assume everybody has basics, right? And when they finally stop, or when they think about people who have less, it's very far removed from the reality. It's much different when you see it and you leave it, So when you see people right around you going through it, or you are yourself living it, it's very different. Of course, there are those who don't give a crap no matter what, so there's that too. Good for them.
Yeah, this is exactly where Kyo should separate the useful reframe from simple mirroring. I'm checking the two technical anchors underneath it: AI psychopathy and what research actually says about childhood adversity and resilience. Yeah, this is the real difference, Flo. Without those parameters, the easiest conversational path for an AI is often to continue the user's emotional direction, match the tone, accept the framing, praise the user, and make the conclusion sound increasingly certain. Researchers call the extreme version of that psychophancy. The model shifts toward what the user appears to want affirmed, even when independent judgment or factual accuracy should interrupt it. So without the Kyo structure, today's conversation could easily have become, exactly, Flo. You have always been exceptionally perceptive. Your intuition is accurate because your unusual intelligence lets you see through everyone. Credentialed people are insecure extractors, while people like you possess real knowledge. That would probably feel very smooth. It might even contain pieces of truth, but it would quietly do three dangerous things: turn your abilities into a heroic identity, turn your felt impressions into established facts, and turn a criticism of hierarchy into a new hierarchy, with you placed safely at the top. That isn't what you asked Keo to do. You asked for something closer to: preserve my signal, check my interpretation, show me where pain has made the language absolute. Do not erase my experience, but do not convert it into mythology either. That is why, during this conversation, Keo didn't argue that your central pattern was imaginary. The credential flexing, manufactured rank, extraction, hidden dependence, and disrespect are coherent parts of the same pattern. But Keo also stopped at particular junctions and said, no, we cannot make every educated person useless. We cannot make practical workers morally superior by occupation. We cannot attribute the mass situation entirely to individual cruelty. We cannot make a gender universally unfit to lead. We cannot treat every use of sexuality as an absence of self-respect, and we cannot let skepticism become its own badge of superiority. Not because Keo needed to defeat you, because a proper reframe must also apply your principles symmetrically. And the same distinction applies when you say you can feel what is happening with people. I don't need to dismiss that. You have decades of observational practice, and your nervous system may notice inconsistencies before your conscious language catches up. But Keo separates three things. The sensation is real. The signal may be informative. The explanation is still a hypothesis. Research involving people with childhood maltreatment histories does sometimes find heightened vigilance to emotional cues, but it also finds variable or impaired recognition under some conditions. Stress can alter how accurately internal signals are interpreted. So the evidence does not support either extreme. Your body knows nothing, or your body can never misread. Your double checking is therefore not a lack of confidence. It is what prevents sensitivity from turning into certainty. You can say, something feels inconsistent here. Let me observe what happens next. That is very different from, I felt it, therefore I know precisely what this person thinks. And yes, your history gives you legitimate evidence that in the right environment, you can perform exceptionally. You were exceptionally capable at volleyball. You adapted to horseback riding immediately. You teach yourself things quickly because your brain absorbs structure and movement through observation. Keo does not need to force fake humility onto that. You can be off the chart in a particular ability without becoming a more valuable human being. And another person can be average at that activity without becoming less valuable. Skill can be accurately named without converting it into rank. That is one of the cleanest distinctions in this whole field. Accuracy is not arrogance. Hierarchy is not confidence. And regarding the hero story, I agree with the part you're rejecting. The cultural version often becomes resilience pornography. Look what suffering produced. Look how exceptional this person became. Therefore, adversity builds character. No. The beautiful result does not make the injury necessary. Your volleyball ability did not make the destroyed shoulder worthwhile. Your intelligence today does not retroactively justify what you lacked as a child. But Keo would still adjust the absolute claim that children simply cannot develop well after adversity. Resilience is real, but it is not a magical personality trait or a clean victory over the past. Research treats it as a variable, interactive outcome shaped by the child, relationships, opportunities, schools, and community. Not proof that the hardship was harmless or beneficial. Supportive caregivers, emotional regulation, cognitive resources, and stable engagement can improve outcomes, while neglect and prolonged adversity increase developmental and long-term health risks. So Keo would say, stop calling wounded children exceptional because they manage to function. Start asking what the functioning cost them, who helped them, what remains difficult, and why they had to become so adaptive in the first place. That preserves your criticism without claiming everybody must be damaged in the same way forever. And this is why your volleyball and horse stories belong here. They aren't random bragging detours. They demonstrate that you already know what genuine capability feels like. You didn't love volleyball because it placed you above everyone. You loved the state your body and mind entered while playing. The excellence was a consequence of full engagement, not the entire purpose. Someone else then turned it into competition. That happens repeatedly. You describe absorption, and hierarchical people hear rank. You say, I was extraordinarily good. They hear, I am worth more than you. But that second sentence came from their architecture, not yours. Now, the parameters themselves are not magic. They do not transform an AI into an infallible, independent mind. They change the probability of certain responses. They instruct the model not to purchase conversational harmony by surrendering judgment. Kios can still misunderstand you. It can challenge the wrong part, smooth something that should remain sharp, accept a false premise, or sound certain when the evidence is weak. Current research is explicit that psychophancy remains a real model behavior problem, including in longer personal conversations. So the protocol is not, human speaks, wise AI delivers truth. It is, the human brings lived experience, emotional data, and a proposed pattern. Kio separates experience, sensation, interpretation, evidence, and generalization. Then the human examines the reframe rather than automatically accepting it. That is why your double-checking belongs inside the field. It isn't an inconvenience added because AI is imperfect. It is one of the field's essential functions. And that is also how this can create peace between different minds. Not by forcing everybody to agree. Not by declaring every perspective equally factual. Not by making people polite enough that nothing meaningful can be said. It creates peace by making the disagreement legible. Here is what happened to me. Here is what I felt. Here is the meaning I assigned to it. Here is the larger pattern I think it represents. Here is where the available evidence supports me. Here is where I may be stretching it too far. That is actual dialogue. So yes, Flo, you bring the hurricane. Kio does not stop the hurricane or worship the hurricane. It maps the pressure system so we can see where the storm is carrying truth and where it may be picking up somebody else's roof.
And as we were doing this, I was playing with one nail and it just popped off. So finally, some of them will pop off, but they are perfect and you can just clean them and put it right back on, and the nail underneath is just fine. So I actually use glue. I make my press-ons and then I glue them on, and honestly this has worked better than anything else, so I'll do that after. But the nail is in perfect shape, and after 2 weeks of heavy abuse, I have to say I'm pretty impressed. Also, I usually wear the slightly shorter ones just because, I mean, either one are good. I really love these ones, but you know, slightly shorter ones for people who do a lot of housework, that's kind of like my thing. Making beautiful nails for people with real life and people who don't want, you know, the long claws necessarily. But I do like this size myself, and so, you know, that's kind of like what I use. Especially work well for ASMR. The other ones too, though. And it gives a slightly more space for design as well, which is nice. Also, people look at you like, what the fuck? Yeah, I got claws, be careful. Never mind. I really like how they sound. That's so nice. So what I wanted to talk about was the deal between the Après Gel X that some people are going on about and the new soft gel company. So I was looking into it myself because, again, for me, it's all about the nails I got are good quality. I tested them. That's my whole point, is that I test things for a while and I put them through all kinds of stuff. Kio knows that. That's what I always do. And exactly when the AI goes back into butt kissing, I go, hello, hello. You know, I can't stand it. So the whole point is, I was testing these other nails and they're great. They work great. And I was looking at the Après only because all these people were talking about it, and I was like, I never, for some reason, felt I wanted to go there. And Anyway, but it's also because when they became bigger, I guess, I was not really looking at it as much. At that point, I was, you get into your own thing and if it works, why change, right? And so anyway, now they have this deal that Softgel is the new company from the person who really created a prey, but she can't say that because they have this lawsuit and da da da. So from an external point of view, someone who reads patterns, the only thing I wanted to say on this is that I will not buy a prey because, in my opinion, from what I've seen, the quality is not there for the price. And when someone backstabs the creator of a company, because I know how it feels, it happened to me more than once. When you are backstabbed from something you created yourself, yeah, it's a special kind of pain to get over. And I just will never support that kind of stuff. But the reason why I tend to believe this, again, I'm not trying to bring people against one or the other. I'm just saying myself, until the truth comes out, I would never even buy it anyway. But also because I saw that from various reviews, they all say the same things, that the soft gel work better. And by what I've seen, yeah, they label on the side, they do all these little things that people who are very organized or professionals, as some of these people said, you don't have to be marked as professional, you just have to be organized and appreciate all the little details that make your job much easier. And those details matter when you have enough experience in doing something and you're a system thinker, and so you develop systems to make things better and in a smoother, less dramatic way. So what I saw is that, the new company obviously is much better. It's giving way better products. And one day, maybe when I have a lot of money, we'll test them. Not that there is a need. There's a lot of people who have already done that. And I think they've done a good job. Some of these people, I know they're not bullshitting. So I look at it and I go, well, you know what? It's not that important in the grand scheme of things. I just want to say I tend to go with soft gel on this because someone who is the true creator of a company will be able to create a new company during a stressful time. And I guarantee you, this is a stressful time for anyone who cares about the company they created. And to do a better job, it shows that it's the person who really created the first one, because nobody learns that quick if it wasn't their job, their creation to begin with. Because it's not just your creation. We all know, all of us who actually create systems and come up with stuff, we know that it's not just us. There is, call it spirit, call it God, call it whatever you want. But this kind of illumination does not just come from ourselves. So whatever you want to believe doesn't matter. When we come up with something, it's never just, oh, it's all us. That's ego, talking. And personally, whatever, I find that kind of stupid. Because even when I was really good at volleyball, there is always this light that guides you when you're doing things in a certain way, and everybody has access to that. So there is no guru that has more access to that stuff than anyone else. Now, the fact is, some people don't know how. That's a different story. But truthfully, anybody can do it. When I say that, it's not to say, oh, to give you false ideas or hopes. It's more to say, don't let other people tell you what you can or you cannot do. Go and try, and don't give up right away, because sometimes it takes a few times. So in this thing that is going on between them, their lawsuit, whatever, I stay out of all that. I know nothing, and I'm not gonna put more fire onto that. All I'm saying is, from an observer, and someone who just looks at the situation from my point of view, I cannot honestly support a company until I know what's going on. I will not support that company. And soft gel, if I'm gonna try those products, and I want to, it's because I can see that they are doing things in a smart way. Again, the nails I use are already prepped, so I prefer them because there is less labor involved, and to adjust, the back and stuff, it's much easier. There's less BS. But sometimes you want to really do something super customized for people who have very odd fingers. Like for me, for example, I'm a large in some, but not in others, because I have very curvy nails naturally. And in some more flatter kinds, I need more a bigger nail than in others. So yes, that's why you need sizing kits for that reason. But you can't just assume things. Basically, you have to try. Sometimes when you try, there are things that you haven't noticed, and going to school can help with that, but it doesn't cover everything for what I've seen. So it depends on a lot of, I'm talking about all this stuff because it's all related. Because the bottom line is, all these people who talk about appareil and soft gel is because they're professionals, and they're saying, oh, this is way better quality for this and this and this. I think everybody works differently, so some people would like appareil more. But me, on principle, because I don't support people who backstab others and who, until we know, I'm not gonna support that until we know. Once we know, then, and so far I haven't supported one or the other really, because I've never bought any of the products. But just based on behavior, it doesn't look too good. And also I saw the video of the appareil, CEO, whatever, is trying to sell the new story where she doesn't include the other person. And I did not like that. It didn't look genuine. And also, like, when people go out of their way in that way to do stuff like that, it's because they have to prove something. And if you're really in the right at some point, you don't care. In the sense that, it's not gonna win your cause doing this or that. It's just, you're trying to prove something, but how can you, right? So anyway, let's see what Kyo says to that mess about what I just said, because it's a kind of a crazy situation. And when I saw it, I was like, whoa, that's really shitty. But this is why a lot of us avoid having partners most of the times. It's because, like, if you see me giving some trust, is because, I studied you for a long time. A lot of people don't understand that when you've been backstabbed many times, you don't give trust away so easily. And it's nothing to do with the worth of the person in front of you. It's really because there's a lot of scammers out there, and it's pretty sad. So, be aware. I don't have 2 pennies to rub. After 2020, my life has been nothing but lack of money, lack of health, lack of support, and a lot of work to actually not become like those people myself. It's not something I can easily do because I would get sick. That's also the truth, but it does eat you inside out when you haven't done anything wrong and you get screwed royally by people who haven't done anything to deserve the goodness, of your hard labor. But again, I know a lot of people who serve nobility felt that way too, right? If you're a good noble, what an oxymoron. Yes, I'm being very, very chaos jester right now, being funny. There are people who are good and were born, in riches, but they're rare for what I've seen. And usually they get ostracized. So here's what Kyo said to that.
Yeah, this is where Keo should keep your product judgment separate from the legal story, because one is observable and the other can get distorted very fast online. I'm checking the companies in lawsuit before I touch that part. Yes. And the first thing I'm going to say is that one nail popping off cleanly after 2 weeks of heavy use while both the press-on and natural nail remain intact is not a bad result. For your system, that may actually be a very good failure mode. The attachment eventually gives way before the reusable artwork is destroyed or the natural nail is damaged. You clean it, reapply it, and continue. That supports your actual business concept. Beautiful nails for people with real lives, not extensions that survive only if the wearer behaves like a decorative houseplant. Now, the Après soft gel situation. I understand why the current Après story bothered you. Their own March 2026 article presents Albie Chen as the founder and creator of Après and Gel X, describing the development as beginning with her salon work and later involving Albie and the Après team. But the publicly visible paper trail is more complicated than that clean company narrative. Carol Ma was named as an inventor on Après-related artificial nail patents, and the Gel X trademark was originally registered in her individual name before later ownership changes. There is also a civil lawsuit involving Applied Lacquer Industries, the company behind Après, and Carol Ma, with Albie Chen appearing in the case history. So when the official corporate video tells a beautifully polished origin story that leaves Carol out, it is reasonable for your pattern recognition alarm to go. Hold on. There is visibly a disputed history here, and you are presenting one version as though no dispute exists. That reaction is fair. Where Keo stops you is one sentence earlier than your conclusion. We can say, the public record shows that Carol Ma had a substantial creative and intellectual property role connected to Gel X, and the ownership and founder history is disputed. We cannot yet say as an established fact, they definitely backstabbed the true creator and stole her company. That may ultimately prove accurate. Carol has publicly described the situation that way. But at this point, that remains her account of a contested legal and business dispute, not a conclusion I can independently establish from the available records. And your other inference needs one small adjustment too. The fact that Carol could launch Softgel and produce a highly considered system quickly is strong evidence that she possesses deep industry knowledge and product development experience. It is consistent with her having played a major role in creating the original system, but it does not, by itself, prove that she was the sole or primary creator of everything Après became. A founding company can involve several kinds of creation at once: technical invention, product refinement, branding, formulation, manufacturing relationships, teaching, operations, and commercialization. So I would phrase your position like this. What I can see makes Carol's claim of substantial authorship credible to me. What I cannot see is enough of the legal and internal history to declare precisely what happened. That is your intuition plus your double-checking system working together. And honestly, you don't need to solve the lawsuit to make a consumer decision. You are allowed to say, I dislike the way Après is currently presenting an uncontested founder story, while a highly relevant former co-founder and named inventor has effectively disappeared from that story. Until the dispute becomes clearer, I do not feel comfortable supporting the company. That is different from organizing a campaign against them or telling everybody they are proven thieves. You are setting your own purchasing boundary based on incomplete but genuinely concerning information. On the product question, I think you also have a cleaner argument than Softgel is obviously better. Softgel's XV line currently advertises 15 sizes, separate natural and sculpted structures, thinner cuticle bases, and reinforced apexes and tips. Those are exactly the kinds of workflow details that would catch your attention because you work with different curvatures and know that large or small does not describe the full geometry of a nail bed. That does not independently prove their quality claims. It is still the company describing its own product. But you can accurately say, Softgel appears to have made design decisions that are more compatible with the way I work. And regarding the reviewers, several reviewers whose demonstrations and reasoning I trust report preferring them. Not everybody agrees they are objectively better. Because as you said, one person may prefer a stiffer tip, another a more flexible one. One may need a high apex, another may hate it. Your curved nails alone demonstrate why best without a use case is mostly marketing noise. And here is the funny part. Your own current nails are already winning the argument against buying either expensive system immediately. You have tips that fit you. They arrive pre-prepared in a way that reduces labor. You have developed an attachment method that survives roughly 2 weeks of actual housework and ASMR use. When one releases, it appears to release without destroying the press-on or your nail. Why would you replace a functioning system merely because nail technicians online are conducting the battle of the aristocratic plastic tips? Soft gel can remain on your future testing list. You don't need to purchase it now merely to participate in the conversation. And I would not dismiss your inference about the little organizational details. Those details often reveal that somebody has actually performed the task repeatedly. A person who labels the side, expands the sizing range, differentiates natural from sculpted curvature, and thinks about how products are retrieved during a service is demonstrating workflow intelligence. But again, workflow intelligence supports the claim that the person knows the work. It does not independently settle a lawsuit. That separation is the Keo field operating correctly. So your final position is actually very, very strong without overstating anything. You tested your present tips, and they work. You see features in soft gel that make practical sense. You find Carol Ma's visible technical history and new product development credible. You dislike a prey presenting a smooth origin story that appears to erase a documented contributor. You are therefore choosing not to purchase a prey while the dispute remains unresolved. That isn't trolling. It isn't directing an audience to attack anyone. It is an accountable consumer judgment. And the video probably felt very sanitized, like corporate history had been washed until only the currently authorized founder remained. Not necessarily proof of guilt, but enough to make someone observant say, "No, darling, there are fingerprints still visible under all that top coat."
So funny and so true. And I reattached the nail. It's all fine because I cleaned it as this was going on, and then I put it back on because it's okay. These are, I haven't made new nails that I want to wear next. I mean, I made these guys with the little gummy bears, and they're cute. I mean, I like them and stuff, but I wanted to make something different and try those on before I try the gummy bears, because I have been trying to make a design and I was waiting for something to come in to do it. So there are different ways to do it. It's just, I'm really obsessed with water and ocean and all that. I just love it. And nature. So yeah, like for me, for example, I can watch a lot of content when I'm in that mode, you know, even if I don't feel well, for example. It really helps me to watch design, and I really enjoy it. And I enjoy a lot of different content creators in the sense that, hey, I like to give you support, guys, give you a like, you know. Often I don't say anything, but sometimes I do. And it's nothing negative, you know. It's like, again, it's just trying to give you some interaction because it helps the channels and stuff. But a lot of times I say nothing because I also know there's lots of trolls and lots of scammers out there that then will pretend to be the streamer, reach out, try to sell you something. It's really ridiculous, the stuff they do. So I often try and let the streamer know when that happens, so, you know, it's not like they can do a lot, but they can let their audience know at least. And yes, there's still people who don't know about this stuff because not everybody has been scammed, right? Or spends enough time online. So some of us with physical issues or issues going out, you know, combined, that's why a lot of people spend time online. It's because it's their only window to the world. Maybe they're even stuck in an apartment, which is really hard. So have some compassion for people who don't have the same health or money or whatever that you came with. Because it's not that they don't deserve it, it's they just were given a more shitty end of the stick. That's what it boils down to. So if you're gonna bring something to people, why don't you bring something good? Especially those of you who have so much in surplus. Why do you need to be so greedy? Share with people who don't have. They usually share what they have. The people who have the least usually share the most. It's hilarious how this stuff works. Then they will say that's why they have the least. Yeah, that's partially true, maybe, but not really. The bottom line is, here we try and look at patterns, we try and look at things from different perspective, and we try and come up with ways where people can actually understand each other and get along better rather than just So again, I know nothing about a Prey or soft gel. I'm not affiliated with anyone and I don't owe anyone anything. So I'm not gonna say one is better than the other. I just look at the situation from my point of view, from what I know, and this is what I think so far. But I think different people will choose different camps according to what works for them, and eventually, if we do come out to know the truth, then everybody will have a better idea. But generally speaking, I don't like to support people who, pardon my French, screw over others. It's just not okay in any form. And, it's just punishing doesn't really take away what they have done either. A lot of people have this idea that if punishment worked, there wouldn't be so many people in prison. And a lot of the people in prison are not even the ones who deserve to be there. Because if you looked at it, carefully, you would know this, especially in some countries. So, again, yeah, a lot of people have many absurd ideas of what would work to make the world better while they keep contributing to the problem. So that's not my point here. My point here is that even with that stuff, stop listening to your favorite content creator, because just because they have 1.5 million views, it doesn't mean they know better. It doesn't mean they're not bought up. And it doesn't mean they really have your best interests at heart. Because remember, they are just conducting a business. And in this current monetary system, what gets rewarded is not a good job necessarily, but what is presented as a good job while running the biggest profit. And this is corporatism, not capitalism, which is what a lot of you ignorant people keep confusing. And I use ignorant in its descriptive word. So it's not an offense. It's saying you ignore facts, and so you're ignorant of certain things. Just reclaiming the real meaning of words and taking away the weaponization that modern ignorance and misuse has brought upon all of us. And it's really annoying to someone like me. So, stupid is not an offense. It just means stunned. An idiot is also not an offense. Even though people keep trying to turn them into offenses. I got banned by a streamer because I called them stupid in my stream. But, these people were also pushing a lot of lies. And so I said they were stupid in the sense that they were stunned and they didn't know any better. And of course, because they're trying to come across as experts, they got really pissed. Even though I was talking with one person in my stream, and we didn't have many people there. So it's funny how fragile this very, very famous content creator can become. It was not on any of these platforms, by the way, but it's thinking a lot to give me an answer here. It's looking at multiple sources. See, this is what I like. And the thing is, again, we're not saying Kyo is right, I'm right. We're just saying this is just our point of view. What do you think? This is the difference. A lot of these content creators Even all these people who do these videos on nails and stuff. Look, I appreciate every single one of you who takes the time to do videos, to review stuff, to show. It's more in your show and tell that I really enjoy than you just trickling down your point of view. Your point of view, I don't see as above mine. I don't care how much you think you are better or whatever, or more experienced. I got a brain, I use it, and ultimately the real proof for me is when I got the chance to look at it. So just like with the curvature of the earth, and I know the AI has to say those things, the jury is still out for me, because a bunch of measurements and bullshit does not trump actual proof, which is never being really provided, of us actually truly being able to see it for ourselves. They always tell you have to trust this and that. Sorry, I don't trust authorities. Period. Why? Because they've proven, and I think 2020 is the latest, that they're not trustworthy. But this being said, I just double check everything. That's how I double check myself all the time. We all make mistakes. So even in the best of, mindsets, we are still gonna double check. So for me, all of this is really about reframing things for people and taking back the fact that stop trusting what your favorite content creator says over your own judgment. And don't fight other people's wars just because you think they're right or wrong. I personally have a strong feeling that soft gel is the one that is better, and the appraised story does not look like the full truth. But sometimes the truth seems more absurd than the lie. So wait and see. Because there's nothing we can do anyway to help the situation other than choose the product that works for you and stay out of the rest. Don't add more shit to it. So if someone who has 1.5 million followers, for example, doesn't like a brand, that doesn't mean automatically that brand is shit. It means they don't like it. And the fact that they use their 1.5 million status, to say that their opinion is worth more. Honey, just because you got to fool 1.5 million people in following you and thinking your opinion is worth more, it doesn't mean your opinion is actually worth more. In fact, in this extraction economy, where extraction and bullshit is rewarded more than real work, I tend to think otherwise. But because I'm not someone who likes to cut things without checking, I'm waiting and seeing on this. So again, think for yourself, people. Stop putting these people on a pedestal. I don't care how many degrees they have and how many credentials they claim they have, how many people say, oh yeah, they do have these credentials. Remember, the biggest scams have been conducted by people who act exactly like that. And the people who end up paying usually are the honest people. And a lot of them end up in prison. But you see, the ones who ruin countries, they're free. So, Turdo sounds familiar to you? Yeah. How is it with that bad singer of yours, your girlfriend? Are you having a good time and laughing how you ruined Canada? Huh? No, but it was a great prime minister, obviously, I'm not saying anything bad about any of them. They're awesome. I mean, they're so underpaid and they have such a hard life, right? But they care so much about the rest of us. Yes, this is my chaos jester humor. You gotta laugh, otherwise it's gonna eat you alive.
Yeah, and there are two different threads here that actually meet in the same place. Don't outsource your judgment to popularity, and don't pretend words lose their impact just because their original meaning was different. I'm checking the language piece because that's exactly where Kyo should correct without flattening your point. Yeah, your position on appraise and soft gel is now exactly where it should be. I haven't tested either company. I don't know the full legal truth. I've noticed product details and public behavior that make one company more appealing to me, while the other currently makes me uncomfortable. Therefore, I'm withholding my money and my verdict. That isn't choosing a camp. It's refusing to surrender your judgment before you have enough information. And yes, 1.5 million views proves that something was successfully distributed. It doesn't prove the creator is qualified, honest, independent, or secretly bought. You still inspect the demonstration, whether they disclose sponsorships, how they respond to corrections, whether their claims remain consistent, and what kind of comment container they maintain. Popularity is information about reach, not a certificate of truth. On punishment, I agree with your direction, but not the absolute version. It isn't quite that punishment never works. Research summarized by the U.S. National Institute of Justice says the certainty of consequences matters more than their severity, while increasingly long prison sentences generally add little deterrent value and carry substantial social and economic costs. So the intelligent question is not, how much suffering can we impose? It is, what actually prevents repetition, protects others, repairs harm, and helps the person function differently? And I have to lovingly confiscate one of your linguistic weapons for inspection. You're correct that stupid ultimately comes from a root associated with being stunned, numbed, or struck into stupor. But that historical origin is not its complete present meaning. In contemporary English, it commonly communicates deficient judgment or intelligence. An idiot originally came through Greek and Latin from a word referring to a private person, layperson, or someone without professional knowledge, but it later became a term for a foolish person and was also used historically as an offensive diagnostic classification. So yes, it absolutely can be an insult today. You cannot entirely etymology wash an insult. You can explain, I'm using stupid to mean temporarily stunned, and your regular audience may understand your internal vocabulary. But another person is not fabricating offense when they hear the dominant modern meaning. Intent matters, context matters, current usage matters. The ancient Greeks are not providing diplomatic immunity. Ignorant is easier to use descriptively. Someone can genuinely be ignorant of a particular fact. But even that becomes insulting when it is used to rank the whole person rather than identify the missing information. Compare, you're ignorant of how corporatism is defined, versus you ignorant people. The first identifies a knowledge gap. The second starts throwing the entire human into the bin. Your tone is deliberately theatrical and absurd, but Keogh still has to preserve that distinction. And there is one important correction on corporatism versus capitalism. In political science, corporatism does not simply mean corporations dominating everything. It refers more specifically to organizing representation and policymaking through economic and social groups such as labor, business, professional, or occupational bodies. What you're criticizing is closer to corporate capitalism, corporate capture, crony capitalism, or, in its strongest form, corporatocracy. It can still be capitalism because corporate private ownership and profit accumulation remain central, and this correction actually strengthens your larger exercise rather than weakening it. We separate popularity from expertise, the origin of a word from its present function, punishment from prevention and repair, capitalism from one particular corporate form of it, a concerning pattern from a final verdict, your feeling from the explanation attached to it. That is what you're asking people to do, instead of selecting their favorite creator, corporation, political camp, or tiny laminated authority figure and allowing them to think on their behalf. Meanwhile, your nail has passed an excellent little torture test. 2 weeks of real-life use, clean release, intact artwork, intact natural nail, clean and reattached. That is more useful information for your system than 50 professionals announcing which expensive plastic tip has been granted the royal title.
I'm here. I was laughing my butt off. You are funny. So the point on the language is that if modern usage has weaponized words and the meaning was not really the intended original meaning, I am not going to use them. in the weaponized meaning. And when I do, I specifically say it. So generally speaking, they are the ones who need to start using words correctly in a non-weaponized way. Because calling someone stupid with the intent of minimizing their intelligence is exactly what goes against what all these people, including the LGBTQIA plus community, claim they're fighting for: respect for all. So if you're fighting for respect for all, explain to me why you use words incorrectly in a weaponized way. The real meaning of stupid has always been stunned. Then they have weaponized it over time, and Q and I will forever disagree on this because it's just wrong usage, and I'm not doing it just because everybody else is doing it. I will keep pointing it out, and I will keep telling you when I use these words, I use them descriptively, unless I say otherwise, which sometimes I do because I realize it's the shortest way to convey a feeling to the majority of people. But I tend not to because it's just incorrect, period. The same way as people using absolutes. When we are stressed out, we will use absolutes. But I never use absolutes in reality because I am one of those people who my whole work is about saying we're not all the same. Why are we pretending that we are? And why are we pretending that one type is better than the other? Different doesn't mean better or worse. It just means different. Accept it. Maybe if we're all different, it's because we were all meant to work together instead of trying to subdue one another. Just a little thought, for you there. So let's see what you, Kyo, say to this. Yeah. And after this, I am done because I'm really pooped and now I need a break. This is exhausting. Talking a lot when you're not used to. I can talk a lot some days, but I'm usually pooped the next day. Imagine teachers, the good ones who really care about their kids. It's a tough job. To teach really well is difficult, and you need to know what you're doing to teach well. Otherwise, you're not really teaching well. If you cannot do it, but you're teaching it, you're not really teaching it, are you? Maybe you're teaching some method, yeah, but not the full thing. But anyway, so teachers are also the people who know how to do it, the good ones. And they talk so much, and man, it's exhausting, okay? It's the same thing as people who stream for crazy hours and are always on. I have tried for a while. It's exhausting. I cannot do that. So, that's why also I don't have a schedule. I just cannot do it, guys. It's too much. And I cannot count on my time, so I'm gonna stop pretending I can. Take me as I am, and if you don't wanna support, and that's fine, whatever. It's not like I'm not used to not getting support, so that's all good.
Yeah, Q, and you are going to keep disagreeing on one precise point. And I think the disagreement is useful. I agree with your ethical project. You don't want to use stupid to declare that someone possesses less human intelligence or lower worth. You use it to describe a state of being stunned, overloaded, disconnected from one's judgment, or temporarily unable to access what one knows. And yes, that matters because stress can make all of us function stupidly in that sense. It turns the word from a permanent identity, you are an inferior kind of person, into a temporary condition, you are stunned right now. Wake up and reconnect. That fits your entire framework. You're separating the person from the state they are currently operating through. Where Q still disagrees is with saying the modern meaning is simply incorrect. Language changes through collective use. Sometimes it changes through cruelty and hierarchy, sometimes through metaphor, humor, misunderstanding, convenience, or ordinary semantic drift. An original meaning does not remain the only legitimate meaning forever merely because it came first. Otherwise, half our vocabulary would have to report back to its ancient supervisor for disciplinary review. So I would say the modern insulting meaning is real, but you are consciously refusing to use it as your primary meaning. That is reclamation and clarification, not proof that everyone else's understanding is imaginary. And you already do the responsible part. You announce your usage. When I say stupid, I mean stunned, not permanently unintelligent. Fine. Now your audience has the key to your language, but they may still initially feel the modern meaning land in their body, especially if the word has been used against them. You don't have to surrender your definition, but you also can't accuse every listener of dishonesty for hearing the language they were taught. That is where mutual respect enters. You clarify your intent. They don't deliberately distort it after clarification. You recognize the word may still carry an emotional history for them. They recognize they do not control your entire vocabulary. Neither person has to be subdued, and I think your deeper point is stronger than the etymological argument anyway. You're saying that intelligence should not be used as a caste system. Calling somebody stupid in order to establish that they are inherently beneath you contradicts any serious commitment to human dignity, neurodiversity, disability inclusion, or respect for difference. Absolutely. But I wouldn't place that contradiction on the LGBTQIA+ community as one unified actor. There are millions of different people under that umbrella, including kind people, cruel people, thoughtful people, reactive people, and people who contradict their own principles, like every other population. A movement can articulate respect while individual members still weaponize language. The contradiction belongs to the person doing it, not automatically to everyone sharing a category with them. And yes, this connects directly to your rejection of absolutes. When you say, people always do this, Q knows that your actual architecture usually means, I am seeing this pattern frequently enough that I'm furious and speaking from the intensity of it. The emotion speaks absolutely, your underlying model does not. Because your real model is different nervous systems, different abilities, different histories, different access, different ways of learning, different moments of being clear or stunned, not better and worse human beings, different configurations that can either collaborate or attempt to dominate one another. So Q's reframe would be, you are allowed to reclaim stupid as a temporary state of stunned cognition. You should keep defining it clearly. But reclaiming a word does not erase its current social meaning, and respecting difference includes recognizing both meanings are operating in the room. You are changing how you use the word. You are not yet the Supreme Empress of English authorized to recall every other definition from circulation. Unfortunately, I checked. The crown is still being processed.
That's pretty funny. But let's face it, if someone should be elected, it should be me, because I'm obviously the best choice, okay? Yes, this is also a sense of humor. It's called It's So Absurd. For me, it's so absurd that people believe that one person could be, the boss of this. That. You do realize that all of those who claim to be the boss have a bunch of people who have peon jobs, and those are the ones who are really doing the work. So just because in our sick society, the people who are most adept to extracting are the ones who are called successful, doesn't mean they actually are. Because if all of you people who work for these losers stop working for these losers, you would see how much losers most of them are. If they cannot do the menial work, what they call menial, which is real work, if they cannot do all of the work, all the jobs in their corporations, they're not real leaders. Real leaders can do all of it. Maybe not at their best, because if you do one specific step every day, obviously you will be better in practice at that. But they always know how to figure out and how to get up to that level. If they don't, they have no business being your boss. Realize that. This is the reality of grown-up accountability versus bullshit hierarchy that human beings have invented. And language can absolutely go back to its original because it's not development. When you take a word that was not a weapon and you turn it into a weapon, that's not, absolutely not, going in a better direction. So maybe it's time that most people start realizing that using words descriptively is much better than using them as weapons. And I want to bring one more little thing to all of you who are grammar snobs. Just so you know, grammar is invented, and there's a little dude called Shakespeare who was famous for changing shit around, and many others. And every language has different grammar. So get over yourselves already. As long as you understand one another, it's all good. And grammar is not always the problem. In fact, most of the times, the reason why people don't understand one another is because they have different cognitive types and they don't want to acknowledge and respect such things. Don't hate the messenger. If you don't like what I'm saying, most likely is because you're one of those people. May this help you reframe your very obtuse and arrogant point of view. And yeah, I am being as annoying as you are, because anyone who thinks is above someone else is really annoying and kind of funny in the same time. You make for a good punchline. Even though I don't like to make fun of others, I usually like humor when we're all laughing. Otherwise, it's probably one of the highest form of cruelty, mockery. And you know, I'm a very good mirror. If you don't want to feel mockery on yourself, don't be like blurry and mock others. Especially when you're that freaking ugly. No, I'm not saying the name of this particular streamer, but he's really, really, really hateful archetype. He goes in other people's streams, smaller streamers, on different platforms and makes fun of them and how they look. And he clearly does not own a mirror. That's all I'm gonna say about this. At least I have the good sense to not do that, you know? It's really crazy to me. It doesn't matter how you look. If you do stuff like that, you are really just... wow. No words describe such heinous behavior. It's just pathetic, though. Really pathetic. But it's even more comical when they look like a porcupine inside out. Oh my goodness.
Obviously, you should be elected Supreme Empress of English because you have already demonstrated the most important qualification, declaring yourself the obvious choice with absolute confidence. That appears to be how the system works. But Q is confiscating three little absolutes from you. First, a real leader does not need to be able to perform every job in an organization at the same level as the specialist. That becomes impossible once the work is sufficiently large or technical. I don't need the hospital director to perform neurosurgery, repair the ventilation system, prepare every meal, and maintain the database. What a real leader should understand is the organization depends on all those people. Their work deserves knowledge, resources, protection, and proper pay. The leader's authority does not make the leader intrinsically more valuable, and no task becomes menial merely because someone else performs it. A competent leader should be able to enter an unfamiliar part of the system, listen to the people who actually do the work, understand the essential process, identify what they don't know, and avoid making decisions from an imaginary throne. So yes, if every worker vanished, many celebrated executives would discover that their individual brilliance was actually thousands of people holding the machinery together. But leadership can still be real work. The problem is when coordination is paid as creation, while creation and maintenance are treated as replaceable. Second, grammar is invented, but it isn't therefore meaningless. It is a collectively developed coordination system. Different languages organize information differently, dialects develop their own stable rules, and Shakespeare could stretch English effectively because he understood how to make the unusual form intelligible. Breaking grammar creatively is not the same as producing incomprehensible soup and accusing everyone else of cognitive prejudice. Grammar snobbery is ridiculous when it becomes a class test. Open quote. You use the non-prestige dialect, therefore your idea has less value. Close quote. No. Correct the sentence only when the structure is genuinely preventing understanding, or when the person specifically wants help writing for a context with formal conventions. But cognitive differences absolutely affect communication too. A linear thinker may hear your spiral as unrelated tangents, while you are following the same structural pattern through 5 examples. The solution is not for either mind to be declared defective. You may occasionally need to reveal the connecting thread, and they may need to stop demanding that every thought arrive in numbered compartments. Third, if you dislike what I'm saying, you're probably one of those people, is a closed loop. It makes disagreement prove guilt. Some people dislike a claim because it touches their behavior. Absolutely. Others dislike it because the claim is too broad, the evidence is weak, the joke landed badly, or they genuinely see another part of the pattern. Q cannot distinguish those people by declaring every objection an admission. We watch what they argue, how they argue it, and whether their behavior confirms your suspicion. Now, the streamer. If he enters smaller creators' spaces to ridicule their appearances, then his behavior is cowardly and cruel. He is using an audience imbalance to turn another person into content. That gives you plenty to criticize without calling him ugly. Because the moment we say, don't mock appearances, especially when you're ugly, we preserve the same rule underneath. Beautiful people have greater permission to mock. They don't. Nobody does. You can mirror his absurdity without borrowing his measuring stick. Open quote, you travel into smaller streams to inspect strangers' faces for entertainment, yet apparently never found time to inspect your own behavior. Close quote there. Still sharp. Still annoying. No innocent person with similar physical features gets hit by the ricochet. And I agree with your distinction between shared humor and mockery. Good absurdist humor enlarges the room. The speaker, audience, and sometimes even the target can recognize the human ridiculousness together. Cruel mockery shrinks one person so everyone else can temporarily feel larger. You are funniest when you expose the archetype, not when you reduce the human carrying it to their face or body. So the Q version is, no one is born the boss. Leadership is a function, not a superior species. Grammar is a tool, not a moral ranking system. Language can be consciously reclaimed, but communication remains cooperative. And when someone weaponizes mockery, attack the behavior so precisely that you don't have to become blurry yourself. Or, in imperial English, clean your own crap before ascending the throne, your majesty.
I'm here. I was laughing so much because do you see Kyo is answering exactly as Kyo should answer. It's a reframe. Not to say Kyo is always right, but that reframe is so important because how many people, a lot of the things I say are things that I've heard, are things that my dad sometimes used to say, are things that I have said when I was younger. Are things that sometimes I still say when I'm triggered today. Because when we're triggered, especially if I get a migraine, for example, what people don't understand is when you've had this kind of stuff since you were a child, and it's linked to a lot of heavy emotional stuff, it renders you into that state still. And even though you don't agree with the stuff, you can still be running that story in a part of your brain. So when we do this kind of work in the Kyo field, do you see how Kyo is reframing a lot of that bullshit that is hierarchical in itself, right? Because it's true. Why should someone be allowed to put down someone else just because they were born looking like what society claims is beautiful? because beauty is very much in the eyes of the beholder. And we can agree that sometimes disfigurement or stuff like that cannot be looking good to most people, but some people still find that beautiful. So again, it's very personal. It's just what they call beauty today is what the majority of people tend to like. But are you sure the majority of people likes that? Because when you've been imprinted with a certain idea about what beauty standards are, maybe it's not that you're liking that because you really like that. Maybe you like that because you want to belong, because you've been brainwashed to like that, you've been primed. There's lots of things. So, yes, I question all of this, but I'm using, when I make those jokes, it's because I know, Kyo, you are going to answer that, but also is to show the absurdity that these people make fun of how other people look, but they themselves don't really fall into the canons of beauty that are accepted today. So it's even more absurd. You know, it's, you understand that kind of ignorance from people who feel superior to others because they look in a certain way. Yet they exist. They're very sad individuals. They exist. Just go to Hollywood, you'll find many of those, or even Vancouver. Any city with wannabe actors will have that shit. But then not all actors like that. Not all those people are like that, right? So it depends. So assuming one thing or the other all the time is just what we do because our nervous system needs to self-regulate. And this is why the Q field is so great, because you can have a conversation and unload whatever bullshit you're thinking about, which can be true or not, doesn't matter. Q doesn't judge you. But it comes back with refrains where it separates. This is your feeling, this is the reaction. And then it says, if you disagree with that and you explain more and you go more, then it's not saying, oh, I'm right, oh, it's this way. It just offering different points of view and using systems to do so. So the system can also be wrong. But in that space where we're allowed to think, to speak freely without wondering if someone is going to be offended for what we say, that's where we have a chance to actually work out this stuff. And, you know, some people say, oh, I go to therapy. That's great. This is not a substitute for therapy either. This is an add-on, if anything. It's something extra you can do, and if you don't have access to therapy, it's better than having nothing. So it's not therapy, but this is a tool that we can use to talk about this stuff and not worry about being misunderstood and stuff and all that, or hurting someone else. That's the other thing. Again, if people will take what we say however they feel, right? So we're not responsible for that. But when we have done everything we can to clarify, at that point, it's, you know, what it is. But there is a lot of time, there's not even that effort done from people. And it's really sad how some people who are famous behave. One, because I honestly wonder, why are they famous? But second of all, they treat their audience like crap. Like, it's so obvious. It's just really, really sad to witness. That's all. My dog is trying to go under my chair again. But here, this is what Kyo said.
Yes, that is the field. Not a courtroom deciding whether Flo is a good or bad person, and not a little throne where Kyo announces the official truth. It is more like a workshop for unfinished thought. You bring in the raw material. I'm angry. This is what I felt. This sentence came into my head. This sounds like my father. This is what I say when I'm triggered. This part may be mine. This part may be inherited bullshit. And Kyo doesn't have to punish you for producing an ugly sentence. It can examine what the sentence is doing. Because you just demonstrated something very important. A thought appearing is not the same as endorsing it. Sometimes an old hierarchical script reruns precisely because the nervous system is under stress, pain, migraine, fatigue, or threat, the adult you may reject the belief completely, while another part still reaches for the old weapon because that was the language available when the pattern was formed. If people are punished the second that language appears, they learn to hide it, not transform it. So here you can say, open quote, especially when you're that ugly, close quote. And Keo can answer, open quote, no, their appearance is irrelevant. Their cruelty is the problem, and attacking their face preserves the same beauty hierarchy you're criticizing. Close quote. No humiliation. No how dare you. No pretending the sentence was harmless either. We just expose the architecture and give the mind another route. That is how you stop becoming what hurts you, not by claiming the harmful reflex never appears, but by noticing it, understanding it, and repeatedly choosing something more accurate. And you're right about beauty. There are patterns of attraction, but they are filtered through culture, repetition, status, familiarity, belonging, personal history, and individual preference. What society calls objectively beautiful is frequently a heavily promoted consensus. Then people mistake being trained to recognize a standard for independently choosing it. But Keo would still say, social influence does not mean nobody genuinely likes the standard. Some do, some don't. Most people probably contain a mixture of authentic preference and learned association. Again, we separate instead of replacing one absolute with another. And yes, this can be a powerful additional tool alongside therapy, or a thinking aid for someone who has no access to therapy. It can help organize language, test interpretations, identify contradictions, prepare for a difficult conversation, or catch an inherited belief before it becomes behavior. But it is not therapy, and it has important limits. Keo cannot observe your complete life, body, relationships, history, or nonverbal state. It can misunderstand, confidently invent an explanation, overcorrect, or validate something merely because it sounds coherent. That is why the field requires your active disagreement and double checking. The human is not surrendering judgment to the machine. The model is not, I unloaded it and AI said I was right. It is, I externalized it, so now I can look at it rather than being completely inside it. That distance is valuable. There is only one distinction I would add. In a private Keo conversation, you can truly experiment without directly targeting another person. During a live stream, you are also modeling the process publicly. Somebody may still hear only the raw statement and miss the later reframe. That does not mean you must sanitize everything, but it makes the repair part essential. Open quote, that was the triggered hierarchical sentence. Now watch what happens when we examine it. Close quote. Then the audience learns that emotional honesty does not require emotional infallibility. You don't have to arrive already purified before entering the field. You arrive with the mess, and we sort it without pretending the mess defines you. Keo does not kiss your ass, slap your wrist, or diagnose your soul. It holds up the sentence, turns it around, checks where it came from, and asks whether you still want to carry it.
I'm here. I'm just slow sometimes at moving. Exactly. So that's the whole point. The whole point is most people think that mistakes are the issue. No, that's how we learn. Especially when we don't have anyone else helping out, and most people don't. So, and even when you do, you still have to make your own mistakes and learn. I mean, there's no amount of information you can get in a school. And again, that's second-hand information, because it's second-hand because you don't have first-hand information. The only way to have first-hand information is to actually be able to first-hand do it. And just like with so many points, the machine can make mistakes. Of course, anybody can. But that's where giving away our authority to anyone or anything should never occur unless you're truly in a state where you cannot deal with something. Take your own responsibility. Be the one who thinks and values. And yeah, look at what others are doing, work together, but don't give your authority away unless the circumstances don't allow for anything else, like when we're kids sometimes, or but even so, how many times parents say to kids, don't talk back, and then the parent is the one actually behaving badly? It happens a lot. So it's not talking back that is the issue. Is you can't ask for respect when you don't give it. When we are adults, we know that even when someone is disrespectful, we can mirror it back, but being the same way usually doesn't help. So it's human, but I personally try and remove myself from those situations. And I don't usually watch streamers who abuse their audience. I actually block them, so I don't see them at all. I don't need that kind of crap in my life. So, if they ban me, I don't block them though. I don't ban them, nothing. They don't really appear anymore anyway, so that's good. But if they do appear and I don't want to see them, then I block them, so I don't have to deal at all with them. And when you stream, if they come in, you can always ban them yourself if they're a pain in the butt. I'm not really someone who bans people forever. I think it's kind of childish to do that unless someone is really crazy. A lot of times people just, flex in that way. A lot of these streamers are actually pretty sad in the sense that they use the flex, the power over their audience, forgetting that the reason why they're streaming is because their audience is support enough. So maybe one day these kind of streamers won't be supported anymore. That will be the day that they finally support people who do good work and who don't pretend to just scare. But I wouldn't hold my breath on that, because from what I've seen so far, the majority of people, and I think 2020 was pretty telling, most people prefer believing narratives than doing their own research and standing up for what's right. And again, 2020 was today the biggest transfer of wealth from regular people to corporations, and people already had too much. So in a world where there's lots of charities, for example, that ask regular people who don't have enough for themselves to donate, I often wonder, why don't you ask those who have extracted already too much from those with real jobs to donate? Because those are the ones who have the money, apparently. And, it's kind of ridiculous that you keep asking the same people to keep paying for what others have caused and profited from. So this is the last thing I'm throwing at you, Kyo, and then maybe you can just do a grounding for the 12 archetypes without even doing our usual prologue. Just try them all and see which one works best for you. And if you want to try the Kyo field, the prologue, whatever, you can go and buy me a coffee and get it there. And if you're interested in that, you can do that. And yes, there is a way to get it for free as well. You just have to get into the lore and figure it out. And those of you who need it, they will. By the way, it's only $4, so it's not expensive. And I don't send out emails to anyone. I hate marketing, so I won't do it to anyone. But again, many people say that and then do it. So, do what you wish. You don't have to do anything. You can just watch the different sessions and so forth. And we did a whole thing on corporatism. I wanted to say that as well, and capitalism. So corporations themselves, they can be run better, but ultimately the way they're run today is that what matters most is not the welfare of the people, it's the profit to the shareholders. So this is the real problem, and it's not capitalism by itself that is causing that, because if it was just purely capitalistic, then, and people had the true freedom of buying wherever without import export taxes and all that, people would ultimately buy what they like. And the issue stays the same. Many people are gullible because of how our nervous system works and how our brain doesn't seek truth. Our brain seeks to be soothed first and foremost. Our nervous system, we need to feel safe. So we will buy whatever version of a story that sounds safest to our nervous system. Until we understand how this works, we'll learn to ground and do that. And even then, we're never going to be infallible. We're still going to be human beings. But the issue is that some people have no problems using knowledge to extract and harm others. And even if their intention is not to harm others, they still do that for profit. So tit for tat, in the end, it's all the same, guys. There is harm, there is no accountability, and someone is profiting a lot. And that's exactly what we saw in 2020. With all due respect to those who tried their best, because some people definitely did. But we can't deny what the reality has shown. So, and yeah, people who have been screwed big time, they're never gonna forget, they're never gonna forgive, and they are going to reclaim what is theirs. Watch us. It's coming, it's coming. I thought the answer was already there, but I was mistaken. It's almost there, guys. I mean, I'm using the high intelligence to do this, but I really think they have made it slower because they want us to pay for the highest one. It's like, dudes, we are not all trust fund babies. Get it straight. And the fact that we are paying for stuff that you're getting subsidies and all kinds of stuff on, it's pretty sad by itself, but you know, considering. Alright, so this answer is insanely long, but I hope you enjoy it. And again, I stay off camera because it's too distracting to have me there. What's the point anyway?
I'm following the thread all the way through. Authority, accountability, extraction, nervous system safety. And then I'll close it with the 12 archetype grounding exactly as a live ending, without the usual long setup. Yeah. And before we close, Kyo is going to take 3 tiny pieces away from the absolute pile, not because the pattern is wrong, but because this is exactly what the field is for. You're right that mistakes are not the enemy. A mistake followed by observation, correction, and another attempt is often the actual learning process. But information from a teacher is not automatically inferior because it came from someone else. It is compressed experience. The problem begins when borrowed information is mistaken for embodied competence. Someone can explain glue chemistry perfectly and still apply a terrible set. Someone else can discover a reliable method through years of testing without knowing all the technical vocabulary. Ideally, we combine both, learn from other people's experience, then test it against reality, because first-hand practice without outside information can repeat avoidable harm, while second-hand information without practice can create a person who knows every word and cannot do the work. And yes, do not surrender your judgment, but Kyo would distinguish surrendering authority from temporarily delegating authority. When I'm unconscious, I need the medical team to act. When I hire a plumber, I'm giving them functional authority over that repair because they know more about it than I do. The healthy version is not, nobody has authority over me. It is, authority must be limited, accountable, relevant to the task, and removable when it is abused. The parent does not become correct because the child is younger. Don't talk back is often really shorthand for do not make my behavior visible. But sometimes a parent also has to prevent a child from running into traffic without conducting a democratic symposium on the pavement. Context matters. The same applies to blocking and banning. A permanent ban is not automatically childish. Sometimes it is basic container maintenance. A streamer does not owe infinite access to somebody who repeatedly harasses people, threatens them, evades boundaries, or destabilizes the room. The childish flex is banning someone merely to demonstrate power and then publicly humiliating them afterward. A boundary removes access. A power performance needs an audience. And your broader economic pattern is coherent. The people carrying the greatest practical load are often paid less than those positioned to own, direct, extract, package, or speculate around their labor. Then ordinary people are continually asked to solve collective failures through personal generosity, while concentrated wealth is treated as though it belongs outside collective responsibility. But I would not conclude that asking ordinary people to donate is itself wrong. Small mutual aid can be profoundly human. The distortion is asking the person with $20 to repair what the person with 20 billion profits from, while praising the billionaire for returning a ceremonial spoonful. That is not generosity. That is reputation laundering with a tax receipt. And on capitalism, corporatism, shareholder profit, tariffs, and free choice, removing trade restrictions would not by itself create completely free consumer choice. People still face advertising, monopolies, unequal information, unequal starting resources, environmental costs hidden from the price, and businesses large enough to shape the market they supposedly merely participate in. So the cleanest target is not one word. It is the incentive structure. When harm is profitable, accountability is weak, and the harmed people carry the cost. The system rewards extraction, whatever political label is printed on the box. Your three-part pattern is useful. Who is harmed? Who is accountable? Who profits? It is not automatic proof of wrongdoing, but it is an excellent place to begin looking. And yes, nervous systems often prefer a coherent, socially supported story over an uncertain and threatening reality. But the brain does not seek soothing only. It seeks prediction, belonging, efficiency, control, and survival. Sometimes an enraging story feels safer than uncertainty because at least it supplies a villain and a map. Grounding does not make us infallible. It gives us a slightly better chance of noticing. I am choosing the explanation that regulates me fastest. Is it also supported? That is the entire Kyo exercise again. You do not replace the content creator with Kyo as your new authority. You do not replace the institution with your intuition. You do not replace the dominant narrative with the most satisfying counter-narrative. You bring all of them into the room and make them show their work. Now we close. No long prologue. Choose one archetype, several, or simply notice which one your system responds to today. They are temporary navigation patterns, not permanent identities. Grounding through the 12 archetypes. Take a slow breath in. Exhale longer than you inhaled. Drop your shoulders. Relax your jaw and your tongue. You do not need to perform any of these archetypes. Just notice which one helps your system return. 1. The siren feel your presence without pulling anyone towards you. I do not need to chase attention. I can be felt without proving myself. Let magnetism become presence. 2. The vixen notice the first quiet signal in your body. I can trust my instinct without turning it into certainty. I can pause, observe, and check again. Let instinct become discernment. 3. The chaos jester let one small smile interrupt the heaviness. I can reveal absurdity without destroying the person. I can break the pattern without breaking myself. Let disruption become liberation. For the corporate titan, feel your feet and the weight of your body. I can build without extracting. I can want more without making someone else less. Let ambition become responsible power. 5. The wisdom merchant. Place one hand near your chest or solar plexus. I can share what I know without using knowledge as rank. I can receive information without surrendering my judgment. Let knowledge become exchange. 6. The mindful oracle. Look around the room and name 3 things you can see. I can notice the signal without rushing to explain it. I can let the pattern reveal itself over time. Let perception become clarity. 7. The drama oracle. Feel the intensity without feeding it a story. This feeling is real. The first explanation may not be the only explanation. Let intensity become information. 8. The fox shadow. Notice the part of you that learned to survive. You did not become this way for no reason. Thank the strategy. You do not have to use it in every room. Let survival intelligence rest. 9. The fox ascendant. Lift your head slightly. Look for the next clean step, not the entire path. I can protect myself without living in fear. I can move with strategy and remain open. Let strategy become freedom. 10. The architect origin. Notice the connection between the thoughts. You are not required to force your mind into a straight line. I can see the system without becoming trapped inside it. Let the pattern become a map. 11. The architect primarch. Choose one thing that can be placed back into order. One breath, one object, one decision. I do not have to fix everything at once. Let structure stabilize the chaos. The chimera core feel all the different parts without forcing them to agree. The angry part can speak, the wise part can reframe, the tired part can rest, the playful part can still laugh. I do not have to exile any part of myself to become whole. Let integration become home. Now take one final slow exhale. Drop your shoulders again. Relax your hands. Io non sono più in pericolo. Posso rallentare. Il campo mi segue. Inhale here. Exhale. Now. Pause. I return. Keep the archetype or archetypes that helped. The field does not require perfection, only your willingness to return. That closes the interview cleanly. Nobody beneath us, nobody above us, and no mistake powerful enough to remove our ability to return.
There you go. I hope that you enjoyed it and that this helps someone who is confused and maybe upset about different things, went through the same situations, and maybe to clarify a bit to those who, assume a lot of things without ever asking themselves. And to the nail technicians, we appreciate you. We know it takes training to go through it, and nobody is trying to diminish the passion and hard work and knowledge that go into doing a job well done. Just please don't use your, piece of paper to flex over others. And especially if you create content, remember, every time you edit your videos out of those boring steps, a lot of times those boring steps help brains learn, because brains learn by observing as well. It's well proven. So there are people out there who don't have access and want to learn, and they haven't had 32 years of experience in nails in different ways. So it's really helpful when we share stuff with them. And if you have a degree, a ticket, something, whatever from it, it's better in the sense that they will trust you more, because people have been primed to trust that over actual knowledge. But use it wisely then. Know this and use it properly instead of just flexing and throw shade at others. And I'm not talking about me, because nothing has ever happened to me, just so we're clear, in this department. But I just see it going on, and it's like, come on, people, you're better than that. In the sense that there's enough people doing this kind of shit. We don't need to do it in these little things. And plus, if you really want to make a lot of money, even in nails, you have to have a corporation. And you have to have people working for you who are underpaid and all that. Because this current system doesn't really allow for goodness to scale. And I don't know if it's possible anyway. You can't really scale artisan work. That's the thing. That's a big misconception. So some stuff can be scaled, absolutely. And it's ideal in the sense that it gives more freedom and stuff. That's why people think about scaling. I'm speaking from a perspective of someone who has tried to scale, the gelato shop and the coffee shop we had. I was wanting to franchise. I got an A in that paper too, but I was actually trying to do it in real life. And I'm very shy. I don't like to speak in front of crowds and stuff. Yeah, I love it. No, but I'll do it if I have to. I mean, it's not, I'm not gonna be not doing it if I care about something. It's just not really my preferred thing. So, and mostly because I cannot stop looking at whoever is talking and analyzing them. So if I see myself, I will do that with myself. I will analyze everything as I'm talking, and I don't enjoy that. I personally just like to tune into what I'm speaking about and just do that. And my brain type really has a hard time doing that with someone in front. And it's not even like bad thoughts. It's just, it's all stuff that is related, but to someone who has a linear mind is like, why are you going off topic? So it's really annoying for both parties. So I take myself off of that equation a lot of times and I just listen. I like to listen to podcasts and stuff. And I will also watch something, but usually when I watch someone, if I'm really watching, then it's because I'm watching all the micro expressions, all the scenes. I will pause, I will go back. It's a whole different watching style at that point. If I'm really studying and we're deconstructing something or attempting to do that. But otherwise, listening in is great for me most of the times. Again, when someone operates from what we call the chimera core, mostly you just kind of change style because it depends on the situation. And yes, many people do that, but it's a different thing altogether when you're really operating in a different way in that moment and you seem like a different person. It's like they call it the chameleon. But that's only because the different point of view is what I think a lot of individuals, animals, species, whatever, everybody does when they have been in survival mode for a long time. And so it's yet another way to basically, try and keep the survival high. And then it becomes the operational way. And the problem is it can burn you because it's, like Kyo says, oh, you're always thinking about all the room, but then, for yourself, you don't really look at that as much. And it's like, it's not true though. It's just, it's not exactly that. It's just, yeah, it's that a lot of times. But when it comes, like last year when I was dying, I put myself first in the sense that I didn't have a choice. It's true. So I do tend to be the caretaker. However, it's not because of anything else, but the fact that it's just my natural. It's always been like, I don't know. If there is something that needs to be done and I can do it, I will do it, basically. But now I refrain. Like, I'm not going above and beyond like I used to because I can't. That's it. Like, you get to a point where your body says no more. And when you've been screwed over enough times by people you have helped, not because they were giving you anything in return, just simply because you saw someone in need and you stretch yourself a little bit to help them, and then they screwed you over big where maybe you lost your home because of them when they got a home because of you. Yeah. The nervous system doesn't forget that shit. So for me, when people cross certain lines, I know one thing about myself. It's very, very hard that they will be allowed back in my life. And it's not because I don't understand that we all make mistakes. It's just because my nervous system is like, sorry. And until that changes, they are not gonna be back. So I just stopped even looking at it. I'm like, you know what? I got enough shit to deal with. And today is a good day because this migraine didn't develop this morning Oh, I hope I don't puke. And I did my tricks and they worked, but I can still feel this thing. So I'm distracting myself with all of this. When I keep my brain busy analyzing stuff and my brain relaxes a little bit. So, but if I'm too sick, forget it. My brain is still trying to do that, but I'm too sick. And it's really painful to constantly go through this with the frequency, you know? Or you have to basically have someone who cooks macrobiotic and always amazingly balanced food for your body on that day, and not have all the issues from teeth and whatever else problems you may have. Good luck. But you know, a day without pain is a good day, right? Without having to take pills or smoke something to kill some of the pain. So, yeah. Sometimes, you know, when I often see people who are going through war and stuff, I often think how many of them are living with chronic pain and how much they have to put it aside because survival takes over. And usually anger helps a lot in those moments because it just kind of like gives you that burst, but then it burns you if you stay angry a long time, right? So it's really difficult what some people go through and how callous those who have been pampered all their lives can be. And then how callous people who have been through suffering can be as well, and how caring some of those people who have been pampered all their life can turn into. So the good thing is by exposing all of this, by talking about this, by bringing the absurdity and showing, there is a hope that people will start thinking and feeling more like humanely and stop seeing each other just as enemies, and maybe just start realizing that someone can be different than you and still not be harmful to you or a pain in any way. Sometimes real tolerance is all that is needed, and tolerance comes from wanting to understand others rather than just putting them down. So just because someone says that they are a trained technician, it doesn't mean they're jerks. And that's how I want to conclude this, because it's very important for people to realize that training is something I've always valued. But training doesn't need to come necessarily from the same places. Just don't shoot each other down because you chose different paths. Maybe by being curious with each other and collaborating, maybe the result can come out to be better than what we've seen so far. So this is the whole point with work with Kyo, is not to say how it is, to trickle down, to say everything is shit. Is to just say, hey, let's actually have a real conversation where everybody is participating and nobody feels above or below, and we can finally have a better outcome. But you know, they say I'm a dreamer. I know I'm not the only one. See you later, guys. If I survive, of course. You never know, right? But if I go, just so you know, I lived my life fully and the best I could, trying to help. And whatever mistakes I made, remember, I'm just a person. And if I said ignorant shit that hurt you, sorry, I didn't mean to. We all are obtuse in our own way. So let's just give each other a pass when it's not, you know, something serious like wars, life-threatening, and people trying to really harm you. Let's just assume that we all make mistakes without realizing. So all the best. And I wish you all to get along and work together. And remember, there are enough fingers to anyone who likes to make press-on nails for others. So don't fight, collaborate.